Calling the meeting back to order. Sharon, I don't know if I thanked you and Kathy at the end of our discussion, but thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Kathy, thank you. Carol, please take on agenda item number 17.
Okay, before we get into club applications, I have a couple of items of business to bring up. One is club resignations. Two clubs have informed central office that they wish to resign from membership. My first motion is to accept the resignation of Persian Bicolor and Calico Society effective December 1st, 2022.
Second.
With regret, I should add.
Okay, any discussion? Sharon?
No, it's really no discussion, but it's kind of sad because they used to run some of the best shows in Region 1 up in the Poconos in the middle of winter.
They did. I remember those shows so well.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
The second resignation is from Mark and Linda. My motion is to accept the resignation of Mark and Linda with regret effective December 2nd, 2022.
May I have a second, please?
George will second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
The next item of business is a club name change request. The Kimmer Cat Club, located in the Northwest region, is requesting to change their name to Lilac City Cat Fanciers, effective immediately. The rationale is in my report, so I will not read that to save time. The Northwest Regional Director supports the change. I move that we approve the name change effective immediately.
May I have a second?
Russell seconds.
Russell seconds, thank you. Any discussion? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
Moving on to club applications. The first is from China Morning Star Club. This club is located in Shijiazhuang, the capital and largest city of Hebei province in North China. With a total population of over 11.2 million, Shijiazhuang is the 12th largest city in mainland China. The city is the economic center of the province and home to major pharmaceutical companies and factories, as well as other industries. All members are active CFA breeders and exhibitors. Two have show production experience. One has clerking experience, and one is a CFA associate long-hair judge. As there is currently no existing CFA club in Shijiazhuang, the club wishes to bring more CFA shows to the general area and help promote cat welfare and responsible breeding to CFA standards. This is an all-breed club, and if accepted, they plan to produce at least one show a year in the area of Guangdong. I move to accept this club.
May I have a second, please?
Any seconds?
Kenny? Okay. John?
We need to approve this club. The reason is the two clubs that used to put on show down there no longer exist. And the people who put on the show now are FFF judges. There's no showdown, CFA show down there for years. And this club, if they put on the show, we have a first show down there, maybe about 4 or 5 years. So we need this club with no presence down southern part of China.
Kathy Calhoun, do you have any additional comments from your committee?
Nope, I do not.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Any further discussion? Any objections to this motion? Okay, I'm going to call for the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. Once I call your name, you can lower your hand. Cam Delbar, Rachel Anger, Mike Shelton, Kenny Curley, Carol Krasnowski, Kathy Dunham, Paula Noble, Mark Hannon, Annette Wilson, George Eigenhauser, Sharon Roy, John Kalula, Melanie Morgan, Kathy Calhoun, Russell Webb.
Kiko.
Yukiko Hayata. All those opposed, raise your hand. No one is opposed. Any abstentions? Pam Mosier.
That is 16 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention.
Motion passes.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, Shining Morning Star Club. Welcome to CFA. Carol?
We have 2 club applications from South Korea. While both clubs are based in Gyeonggi province, the club plans to produce shows in different cities. Gyeonggi province is located in the northwestern area of the country, and with a population of over 13.5 million, it is the most heavily populated province in the country. The first club is Jelly Paw Cat Club. This club plans to produce shows in Sejong, a city in Gyeonggi province that is bordered by Seoul to the northeast and the Yellow Sea to the west. Sejong has a population of over 500,000 and has been growing rapidly over the past several decades. 7 members are active CFA breeders and exhibitors. 6 have show production experience, including entry clerking. 4 are licensed clerks, including a master clerk, and 1 is the country coordinator for South Korea. This is an all-breed club, and if accepted, the club plans to produce 2 shows a year in Sejong. The International Division Committee supports this club. I move to accept the club.
Have a second, please.
Second.
Kathy Calhoun, second. Kathy, go ahead.
The only thing that I have to mention, and Carol captured it in her report, and so did Bob Zenda, his support for this club.
Okay. Matthew Wong, do you have any comments? I don't know if Matthew's with us. Discussion? Questions? Any objections to this motion? Seeing no objections, this motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to Jelly Paw Cat Club. Welcome to CFA.
Okay, the second club from Korea, South Korea, is the Paradise Cat Club. This club plans to produce shows in Seoul, a city in Gyeonggi province and capital of South Korea. Seoul is somewhat centrally located in both the province and the country. With a population of over 9 million, it is the largest city in South Korea. 10 members are active CFA breeders and exhibitors. 2 have show production experience and assisted the Vietnam Cat Club with their first show recently. And 1 has clerking experience. This is an all-breed club, and if accepted, the club plans to produce 1 or 2 shows a year in Seoul. The International Division Committee supports this club. I move to accept the club.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. Discussion? Kathy,
Bob Zenda has reviewed this in his report
okay,
as in support.
in support. Matthew Wong, do you want to comment? Okay. Any other discussion? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Paradise Cat Club. Welcome to CFA. Carol?
And the last application today is from Universal Feline Fanciers. This was a former CFA club that was dropped in June 2022 and is reapplying. The club was formerly very active in CFA until their membership lapsed due to the pandemic, and they now wish to start up new activities again. This club is located in Tin Shui Wei, a town in northwestern New Territories of Hong Kong. The New Territories is one of the 3 main regions of Hong Kong, along with Hong Kong Island and Kowloon. The New Territories makes up about 85% of Hong Kong and contains about half the total population of Hong Kong. 3 members are active CFA breeders and exhibitors. 2 have show production experience, including entry clerking, and 7 have clerking experience, including a master clerk and a certified clerk. This is an all-breed club, and if accepted, the club plans to produce 1 show a year in Hong Kong and additional shows if possible. The International Division Committee supports this club. I move to accept the club.
May I have a second, please? Kathy Calhoun. Kathy, comments?
The same.
Same.
Bob Zenda is in support.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Universal Feline Fanciers. Welcome to CFA. Carol?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Carol, thank you. Moving on to the next item. Special Investigation Committee, Mike Shelton.
Let's try again. Thank you. Still not quite there. Before I get into the meat of all of this, I would like to acknowledge that Kathy Dunham has submitted a resignation from the committee. And I cannot express enough to about her support for us as we were getting off the ground, and the liaison to her former ad hoc committee has been invaluable. So thank you, Kathy. We have been, besides looking into the occasional investigations, there are a couple that are still ongoing, but there's nothing to report on them yet. I'm not going to talk about them in open session. The main things we have been talking about are first codifying our process. We want to know people, we want people to know how they can get information to us about potential account manipulation allegations. And so that's been described here. I'm not going to go read it all out. These letters, templates that are in the report had been part of the December agenda, but they were postponed for time until this meeting. I have, though, run these by the CFA attorney and modified them a little bit from the December versions to incorporate her comments. So the first thing is we have these letters first to notify somebody that we are initiating investigation, and potentially to notify them that we have found that there may be that there is evidence that a potential infraction has occurred. We are not at this point, our intent is not to go after people because of a single allegation. Our belief is that anybody could do something that looks like point manipulation without really meaning to. The intent is to go after patterns of behavior. And so with our current process, we would be notifying somebody after a first incident that we have found that there may be something there. Future incidents, if there are repetitions, would be referred either to the board or the protest committee. Our intent most of the time is go to the protest committee, but we just wanted to leave the option open to refer to the full board if for some reason that was deemed more appropriate. So the first thing I have is an action item to approve our process and these letters.
So Mike, can we approve each of the letters separately?
Sure.
In case there's any questions or comments?
You can approve them however you would like.
Yeah, why don't we do that just in case? So why don't we approve your initial letter that is proposed? That,
Yeah.
that's your motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Hey,
Standing.
Pam Delavar. Oh, you just said standing?
I'll be a standing second.
Thank you. Any questions for Mike on the proposed initial letter? Mike, I just have one question. Will SIC be spelled out?
It can
Special
be.
invest, okay.
Yeah.
That would be my only request on that. George?
And I was gonna make the same comment. Every time I see SIC, I look for the typo.
Yeah.
It gets repetitive to have to type that out a lot.
Okay, any other questions? Any objections to the first letter? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Okay, Mike, let's do the second one.
Then this is the letter that we would send out if we found out that there was indication that an infraction had been committed.
Okay, and Pam is the standing second. And my question is the same, spell out SIC. Does
Absolutely.
anybody else have any questions? Okay, any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously. Okay, now are you asking for approve the investigation procedures or?
I don't know if it really I don't know if this is something that needs board approval, but I certainly wanted the board to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because my intent is to publish this, because it's no good to have this procedure if people don't know what it is. So if there's any suggestions, objections to anything, I'd certainly like to hear them now.
Yeah, I don't, for me personally, the board ratified the appointment for you to have this, back when Daryl was, president. And I don't know that we need to approve the investigation because that's what the committee is doing. So does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah, we're just kind of acting out of an abundance of caution because this is somewhat new ground for CFA as a whole to have this kind of committee. So we're trying to be careful.
Right. Okay, very good. What else do you have?
The second part of this came out of the committee's belief that we are not going to be able to really change the underlying attitudes that we believe led to some of the behavior last season without trying to change the culture within CFA. So we have come up with this document that is somewhat grown out of the exhibitor's code of ethics and calling it a standards of behavior for CFA show exhibitors. And it's a much more expansive document as far as describing what we believe CFA exhibitors, the standards they should be held to. This serves a couple of purposes. A, it's to try and start kind of guiding exhibitors back to where we would hope they would be in terms of what we are really trying to do with shows. Shows should not be all about what awards can we get. It's about promoting the breeds and promoting the fancy. At least that's our opinion. So we're trying to kind of push things back that direction. The second thing is that one of the problems we have come across, and I know has come up before, when we do get allegations of some kind of count manipulation, is there are no rules that really describe what that is. We have tried to put some things in here that go toward describing the types of things that we would consider egregious behavior. It's still always going to be difficult because we're trying to determine intent, and determining intent is never simple. But we have had discussions. I've talked to Ed Raymond about this. We've had discussions internally about exactly how we would do this. But one thing we were considering is that if this document is adopted, and I'm not asking for approval on it right now, we're just asking for feedback. But if this were to be adopted, that we could then initiate a show rule, something along the lines of violations of the exhibitor of the standards of behavior for exhibitors could be subject to disciplinary action as conduct detrimental or unsportsmanlike conduct, but something along those lines. So we would have a very short show rule that would reference this document. So at this point, we're looking for feedback on this because I realize there's a lot here.
Okay. Any feedback for Mike on this? They either like it.
They didn't like it, they like it or don't care.
It's a good start.
It's a good start.
It's a good start.
All right, so what's your plan? You want to bring this back at
Well, so
the,
we're still discussing options within the committee on exactly how we're going to look to have this kind of thing implemented.
okay,
And we'll work with show rules and figure that out sometime between now and April 15th. Kathy has her hand up.
Kathy?
From Ed via Kathy. Is there a no finding of an infraction letter that needs to be approved?
We haven't written one. We figured that will be much shorter. But yeah, there will be a similar letter saying we've completed our investigation and found that there is no evidence of an infraction.
Okay, is that something that we need to, since you provided the other letters, is that something that we need to?
So again, whether or not we need to is a different question. We're certainly willing to come up with something and present it to the board.
I think it completes the package.
Sure. I mean, our concern was that these two it was more important to get these two right
Sure.
because we're making allegations potentially. So, but no, we can absolutely come up with something.
George?
I agree with Kathy. If this is intended to be separate and apart from the protest process, or at least initially separate from the protest process, I think you should give people the option at the end saying, and if you're unhappy with what we did, this is the link to the protest process or something like that. They can file it on their own.
Okay, these letters, I mean, are you saying that we could send something out to the people who made the allegations?
Correct. If you're unhappy, then always
Okay.
file a protest.
We can incorporate that. I don't see any reason why not.
Anything else, Mike?
Those were all I had.
So will you be able to bring back the final letter for April board meeting?
Easily.
Oh, okay, great. That's
Yeah.
it. All right, thank you. Anybody? Mark?
Maybe we could get some feedback from the fancy by having it either go out with Pam's notes, or we could send out a CFA news notice, or we could post it on the Facebook official page. And just let the fancy see what's being proposed and give some feedback.
Pam?
I was not planning to go this in-depth in the notes.
I mean, I'll be happy to post it on the official Facebook page.
The full,
And what should I do? Tell them that they have any comments to send them to Mike?
Mike?
Mhm.
You welcome the comments?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments for Mike? Okay, Mike, thank you. Let's see. I think we're on to Annette, right? Reads the standards.
Mhm.
All right, Annette,
It's early. Okay, so the report is a little out of order. So the first person I'm gonna thank is Rachel, who was very patient with me as I sent things out of order in different formats. So we're gonna try to go through some of this, and then we have some people actually scheduled for either presentations on by Zoom or in person. But the first action item I have is, we discussed this, I brought this to the October meeting and then brought it back with input, brought it back in December, but then I withdrew it because we didn't have time. So what my ask is, will the board agree to submit and support a change to the bylaws to permit a policy change from membership applications to the Brief Council at any time during the year? And what the proposed wording does is remove the membership applications at the very end there. Brief Council standing rules would be accepted year round, but must be received by August 1st to vote in any poll or election conducted during that membership year. Newer breeders, breeders assign goals, and while we all tend to think, because we're putting on shows or participating in shows, that a breeder's first goal is to get a national win, or sometimes it seems like that. In fact, many of them, their goal is to have a successful litter and hopefully have a kitten they can show. But joining the Breed Council, I just had 2 Russian blue newer breeders. They've got 2 females. They've got their first litter. When can we join the Breed Council? So I had explained our convoluted rules for doing that. But when then they are eligible, say they meet their qualifications in September, they have to wait until April to join the Breed Council. I didn't want to put any policy together here at all. I think that's up to central office, and I know Ellen and I have had some discussion on how this might work. But if someone wants to join the Breed Council and they meet the requirements, I don't think we should make them wait until April 1st. This doesn't remove that you can't vote unless you're there by August 1st. So I'm just asking that the board, would the board submit this as a change to the bylaws, specifically the Breed Council standing rules?
okay, may I have a second?
Second.
I had Pam go by that one first. Okay, Melanie?
Okay, I couldn't agree with Annette more. This request keeps coming up, and I think that's because there's a very real issue here. I can speak to this as a breeder, as a breed council secretary, as a mentor. The current system is confusing to new breeders, and it's frustrating to them because they're excited about meeting the requirements finally for membership in the breed council. They want to join, and then they're told, oh no, they need to wait, and that delay can be substantial depending on the timing. By the time they're able to join, many times the excitement's kind of waned, and they're like, yeah, whatever. We should be encouraging membership in breed councils, which are having memberships decrease precipitously lately, and making things inviting, not creating barriers. We lose an opportunity to get their participation when we delay this process. And we reinforce the impression that we're inflexible and stuck in our ways. So needless to say, I strongly support this, and I thank you, Annette, for bringing it up. We keep bringing it up. at our breed council secretaries meeting with the board. And we keep bringing it up because we really believe in it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Kathy Cullen?
While it's not part of this request to change the rules per se, I would like us also to remove the 2-year membership option. I'm not really clear. Clearly, it does not increase breed council members. It does not do that. It's probably the only fee that comes to mind that has a 2-year option. Most everything else is on an annual basis. I'm not even sure what the rationale was to go to a 2-year option, but I think it just adds a level of complexity. There's no discount for it. It's a budgeting. It just adds a level of complexity that does not seem to have an upside.
George?
I think the original rationale was that they don't have to keep explaining to people why you can join the breed council in August, but you can't vote until next year. And they're afraid that would confuse people, especially since new breed council members are often new to CFA as well. On the other hand, I'm not convinced that it's all that big a problem, so I'm going to support putting this in front of the delegation.
Any other additional comments on the motion that's in front of us? Kathy, you're not proposing this, what you're recommending be added to this, are you?
I am.
Okay. George?
I think it would be better if we did those as 2 separate motions.
Okay, so let's get this one first.
Okay.
All right, very good. Nat, you made the motion, Pam Dellebar, you seconded. Any other comments on this motion? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously. Okay, Kathy, if you want to make a motion, because it's not pre-noticed, it will require 2/3.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I make the motion to the board tomorrow afternoon at 1?
No, because it's 1:57 and tomorrow's meeting will end at 1:30.
Oh, my clock is still on Central Time. At 2,
Sorry.
at 2.
1:30. Ending at 1:30. That's what we're shooting for.
Okay, so I will make
Because
the
people
motion.
got flights, so.
Yeah, I have a flight, a big flight, 3 big flights.
Okay, George,
I think all she's asking you to strike out the first sentence. I'm not sure how complicated we need to make that.
It's not the first sentence.
No,
No.
no, what I'm asking is the optional 2-year membership.
This first section, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
It's the
to
first
strike
sentence.
Okay,
that.
then starting
And-
with the words, it's an optional 2-year membership and ending with even numbered year.
Recording in progress.
okay, so it's right after April 30th. Let's make sure we got it.
Well, then you have to take out a 2-year membership and you have to-
An option of the 2-year membership.
maybe it should be retyped up and brought back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'll retype it and bring it back, and it would have to get 100% because we'll do it before 1.
Don't be different with mine.
No, well, hang on a second.
Eastern Standard Time.
You're already making the, Shelley, are you still there?
Yes,
No.
I am.
I was here till 2:30. Shelley, since Kathy pre-noticed this, it still is gonna require 2/3. It doesn't need 100%, even though she's gonna rework it and bring it back tomorrow. Is that correct?
So anything pre-noticed unless specifically outlined in the bylaws needs 50-50. She's allowed to amend a motion so long as when she brings it back, she says, I'm amending my motion, and someone agrees and the board votes to amend it, then as amended, then it can proceed with 50% unless a change in this particular item would require 2/3.
Okay, so if I understand that correctly, you're gonna bring back the motion tomorrow with the correct wording, correct? And it requires 2/3. Okay,
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 okay.
thank you,
I'm
Shelley.
not sure I said it required 2/3. Unless if she amends a motion, Rich, you can do that. You can amend a motion by a 50% vote. So if she brings back and says, I had a pre-notice motion, which only required 50% yesterday, and I'm moving to amend it, then it's just an amended motion that was already pre-noticed. And if it passes with 50% to amend it, then it only needs 50% to actually pass the motion.
My understanding of the issue, Shelley, is she didn't pre-notice the motion at all. We're getting it right now.
Well, if she presents it within after 24 hours tomorrow, then then it's pre-notice, but I don't think you even have the motion yet. Cause she's gonna rework it, but she's brought the issue, so.
Okay, George,
Yeah, if we're gonna adjourn at 1:30 tomorrow, I don't think we have enough time to give 24 hours.
we don't,
And this is an entirely separate motion from what was originally.
It is.
brought, so
completely separate.
I think it's gonna take 2/3, but no, it does not take unanimous consent. This doesn't an vote, but 2/3 is probably correct.
Annette,
I could read what her motion would be right now. Would that be pre-notice? And then she could type it up so we actually have it in front of us.
Shelley, did you hear Annette?
Yes, if she gives you 24 hours notice, that's your new rule, and it doesn't come back for 24 hours, then that's pre-notice.
George,
Again, if we're gonna adjourn at 1:30, I don't think.
I have.
okay, Kathy Cahoon,
Okay, would it be, could we just move forward with this as it is? Can I bring it and work with Annette and work with show rules and bring it back in April? So that if it's going to be,
you can bring it back in April. You can also bring it back on an online motion, but it needs unanimous consent.
why do I do that?
George,
I think your best option, is bring it back tomorrow and go for 2/3 rather than go online and try for unanimous.
that's all we need.
You only need 2/3.
All you need is
Without-
2/3.
Okay, all right,
Better shot at it.
okay,
Okay, let's do that and you won't
Okay.
waste any time. You and Annette can be on your own time. Okay, continue, Annette.
Back to you.
Do we have to vote on this?
no,
No, she's bringing it back.
No,
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 vote on mine.
and that's motion.
we already
Oh,
did it.
unanimous.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, we already did it.
Yes. Did we vote?
Did we do it?
Oh,
Yeah, we
okay.
did. We already did it. I circled it. Unanimous.
Seconded.
Yeah, that was already done.
That was easy peasy.
George, remember you requested it be not included. Vote on the original, so. You're it, Annette.
Okay, we could revisit this. Ellen said, well, and I could do it now that I look at it. We could actually read Kathy's motion right now.
You want to read it?
I'll read it. So this would be, but I don't want it attributed to me. I'm speaking as if I'm Kathy. I'm teasing. Okay, so based on the input from this meeting right now, we would propose to change Appendix A, read council standing rules of the CFA bylaws to read. Membership by eligible individuals in any breed/division section may be obtained by submitting to the central office a completed membership application form together with the appropriate fees. A membership runs from May 1st to April 30th. When available for distribution, the show rules and show standards will be sent to each member. Membership applications for any given year will not be accepted after August 1st of that year. What we would be striking out are the two sentences. An optional 2-year membership will be available in even numbered years for those members who have bred a CFA Grand Champion or Grand Premier of the appropriate breed/division. A 2-year membership will begin May 1st at even numbered years and end on April 30th of the next even numbered year.
Okay, Kathy, how did she do?
She
She
spot
nailed
on,
it? Okay,
spot on.
George,
Again, if we're trying to pre-notice this by 24 hours, we're gonna be a half hour late. It's gonna take 2/3 if we vote on it today. It's gonna take 2/3 if we vote on it tomorrow. Let's just vote on it tomorrow.
Yes.
We're gonna vote on it.
Right.
Okay, any
Can I
dis-
just check on one thing since I have the bylaws with me?
Sure.
Do we define? The 2-year membership thing includes the members who have run a CFA grand champion or grand premier, the appropriate division. Does that have to be in? There somewhere, or is it? You know what I'm saying?
No, that just has to do with.
Does that only have to do with the 2 years?
Can do the 2.
Oh, okay, all right. Then forget I said anything.
Is it all clear?
Yes.
We're in good shape. Okay, any further discussion?
We don't have a second? If we
Second.
don't, I will second it.
Okay, George said he just seconded it.
George, can-
And Kathy, it was your motion. Okay, so we got Kathy and George. All right. Any objections to the Kathy's motion? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
So how did this go to the pre-notice? Someone has to fix it.
So then it goes to this.
Coming from the board.
You got 100% support. Okay, Annette. Back on schedule.
Yes, I was just checking what the next step is to get this into the. Okay, so we're ahead of time, so I'm gonna explain a little bit what we're gonna do. We're gonna go through the ballot items that were passed by the Bree Council secretaries, and the Bree Council secretaries may or may not be on yet, since I told them 3 o'clock, but some are, so we may be jumping around a little. I know you've all read them very carefully. At 5 o'clock, we have a hard stop because we have a Bree Council secretary calling in to do the presentation on the bimetallic color. And we are going to have one other Bree Council secretary presenting the Carpati banner. Dennis. You know, he's in, and we have Mike Lees here for the Cornish Rex. I don't know, do you have a time frame? No. Okay. And then we are also going to have two breeds that are requesting advancement. One of which has cats for us to look at, and they'll be set up down in the Erie room. And we're gonna have to kind of play it by ear. I told them that they could get set up, but I had them scheduled for about 5:15 or 5:30. So that would kind of be an end, so you could all get a kitty fix before you go to dinner tonight. But we can take their standard changes ahead of time. So what I think I don't know if anybody printed off the little cheat sheet, but that's the easiest way to follow along. But
Annette, before you continue, I think George had a question.
I just want to be clear on the last motion. Who's writing the rationale?
Kathy.
Okay. And she is being assigned that task.
She took it on.
Okay.
Why does it have to be rationale?
Yeah.
Does it have to be? Okay. I
If you
will.
put it up without a rationale, the delegation will have no idea why you're doing it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Annette.
Okay, so we're gonna jump around a little bit. And first, we're gonna go through the Bree Council ballots. You're gonna have to scroll through the Toy Bob and the Lycoi summaries to where it starts with 2022 Bree Council Secretary election results, which are there for your information. We can move on beyond that. They've all been notified of the election results.
Rachel.
So I see up here in your item number 2 that you would like to make a standing motion, and I would like to make a standing second.
Okay, thank you.
Honored to have you.
Great.
All right, is Carol Johnson on the call?
No.
Okay, then we're gonna skip past the American Shorthairs. And we'll have to go back to it, someone have to keep track of it. Are the Bengal, is Sammy Kerr and Melody Boyd on?
Melanie Boyd is here and she is a panelist.
What about Sammy then?
Sammy is not here. Or at
Could
least
you-
not that I
Can we
can.
ask Melody if she's expecting Sammy to be in?
Melody has to unmute. She's on the panelist.
Tell me where you are. Sorry.
Okay, I did message Sammy. She is planning on being here, but I don't think she realized that we're ahead of schedule.
We can come back,
We're gonna come back.
we'll come back.
Yes, she hasn't checked her messages yet. And I'll try and give her a call and get hold of her so you can move on to another breed and get back to the Bengals.
We're gonna move on, okay?
We'll come back. to it.
Okay.
Okay,
So
go
we'll
ahead.
see when she's on. Is Cindy Bird on?
No.
All right, skip past the very short hairs. Okay, let's go to Burmese. There was one item.
He's not here.
No, he's not going to be in. Okay, so Art Grassman is the Burmese Breed Council Secretary. They had one proposal, which was a housekeeping cleanup. It was a grammatical issue. To remove the comma after round and strike has and add with, so that paws are now round with 5 toes in front, 4 behind. So it's just a correct grammar. So moved.
Any discussion? Any objections? Motion passes unanimously.
Yay. Just want to check something off. Okay.
We like to see enthusiasm.
I know, I've been waiting all day for this. Next is the Cornish Rex. Breed Council Secretary, Mike Lees is here in the audience. They have, how many proposals? 5 proposals. Mike, did you want to speak or do you want to be available for questions?
Available.
Okay,
Mike,
so-
come on up to the table, please. Join us.
All right.
Okay.
Warm spot.
So the first proposal clarifies the calico and bicolor pattern and removes all van pattern descriptions or reference to the van pattern. The added wording is underscored and the removed wording is deleted. It'll shorten up their color descriptions a little bit. Give us some paper.
The whole intent of that one.
Yeah. So they're just basically taking out something instead and putting it in one place instead of repeating it. Does anyone have any questions? So moved.
Okay, any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, standard change number 2 adds the tick tabby pattern to the patch tabby and white description. They do already allow tick tabby in all their other tabby classes, so it's not a new color or pattern. It's merely adding the word ticked, the description, after patch tabby and white. Does anyone have any questions? So moved.
Any objections?
Oh.
What's the matter?
Oh, okay.
Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Show rule number 3. This includes the chocolate tabby and the brown tabby class and the lavender tabby and the blue tabby class and adds chocolate and lavender to the patch tabby classes. So it's moving them from the other Rex colors into classes where they probably should be in the first place, and then they will compete with other tabbies in the tabby class. Their color descriptions in that part of the standard are already there. This is actually a show rule, not a change. It's not a standard change because they're just changing where it goes in the color class. Any questions?
Melanie has a question.
I do, so if you're gonna include brown tabby, chocolate in the brown tabby class, are you gonna change the title of what the brown tabby class is? Because and same thing with blue tabby. I mean, patch tabby is open, it could be different kinds of that, but it just seems to me like it should be brown / chocolate, blue / lavender, rather than having something that says one color and then we're putting a variation off of it.
Annette?
I actually asked that question of, he had some of his recon members help with adding these. And they were actually right about their answer. There are other cleanup things they need to do in their color class descriptions. And so they would like to, because it lent itself to a whole bunch of other questions if you look at their color class. So.
Melanie?
Then I prefer to wait until they get those cleaned up.
Any additional questions? Okay, I'm gonna have to call for the vote on that.
Sorry.
All right, I apologize. All those in favor, raise your hand. Rachel Anger, Mike Shelton, Kenny Curley, Pam Delabar. You can lower your hand when I call your name. Carol Krasnowski, Kathy Dunham, Paula Noble, Mark Hannon, Pam Mosier, Annette Wilson, George Eigenhauser, Sharon Roy, Kathy Calhoun, Russell Webb. All those opposed, raise your hand. Melanie Morgan, John Kalila. Any abstentions? Yukika Hayata, are you in favor?
Yes, I'm favored.
Thank you.
That's 15 yes votes, 2 no votes, 0 abstentions.
Motion passes.
Okay, standard change number 4 removes the pointed and white color description from the pointed color section of the standard. It's already included in the bicolor section, which is where it needs to be. So they're just moving the description from one place in the standard where it describes colors and patterns to the place where it belongs. So moved.
Questions? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
Number 5 includes seal torty and chocolate torty in the links point color description. It corrects the description of the mass markings to include the word stripes. The color torty should specify both seal and chocolate. So moved.
Any questions? Any objections? Motion passes unanimously. Anything additional?
Not for the Cornish Rex. Thank you
Mike,
for
thank
driving
you.
500 miles.
Thank you very much.
Work the ground.
Okay. Okay.
Sammy's on, so we're ready to go to the Bengals whenever the board's ready.
Okay, let's go to the next.
Okay.
This is the hard part. Isn't it? Yes, Bengal. I don't have a page.
What number is that?
There we
96?
go.
I'm here.
Just be patient.
Page number 95.
I don't know.
We'll be right with you.
Okay.
Has everybody found it?
Yep.
Okay, the first proposal changes the disqualify section to include clearly visible tail faults. So the disqualify section would remove the sentence kinked or otherwise deformed tail and then replace it with clearly visible tail kink or tail deformity. And you can read the rationale, and I believe we got some input separately on this also. So moved.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, does anybody have any comments? Pam Delabar?
For the major associations besides CFA in Europe, FIFA, it's an automatic disqualification. Even doesn't care whether it's visible or palpable, it's a disqualification. In WCF, it's a cannot earn a certificate or title. I don't like dumbing down standards, and that's basically what I feel is going on here.
Melanie?
Won't be as succinct as Pam, but I do agree with her. I'm disappointed to see this here again. And I'm hopeful that we as a board won't support the proposal, which quite clearly, in my opinion, takes a standard backward in the wrong way. There's a precedent for the board not supporting proposals that were approved by breed councils, but in the opinion of the board, don't benefit the overall health and welfare of the breed, or put out an impression of our association that is favorable. Breed standards should be aspirational. We shouldn't devalue our standards, and we shouldn't take them down to the cats we're breeding. We should take our cats up to the standards that we uphold. Registries, as Pam mentioned, like FIFA, GCCF, and many others, include tail faults of any sort as a general disqualification because they're considered abnormalities that involve skeletal issues. CFA, like Kika, is breed specific in terms of how we address tail faults. And we're one of some of the only associations worldwide that are like that. But just because we have some breeds that allow no visible faults doesn't mean that it's beneficial to any breed. And I truly hope we won't consider taking the standard back by supporting it. As an association, we should be sending the message that we're concerned about the health of all of our breeds above and beyond points, titles, and showing. And making this adjustment sends the opposite message. I feel really strongly about that. I think we should strive to breed cats that meet the standards with the understanding that not every cat we produce will be a show cat. It doesn't mean they can't contribute to a breeding program if a breeder personally feels that they want to go forward with cats like that. However, once you start breeding cats with issues, you pretty much have guaranteed you won't eliminate the problem. We start rewarding cats with structural issues in the show ring. We take away the incentive for people to raise the bar, and we send the wrong message to breeders and to the world at large. Sorry to go on so long, but I feel really strongly about this issue.
Okay, George?
I agree with everything Pam and Melanie said. And I think this is actually 2 steps backward. They're not just adding visible, they're adding clearly visible, which, you know, even a visible kink isn't a DQ. It's got to be clearly visible. So it's 2 steps backward, not 1.
Okay, Rachel?
Okay, I'm gonna take a little bit of an opposite approach. To me, the breed council has clearly expressed their desire for what they want for their breed. I'm going to support that. They stressed that the tail is not the essence of the breed. They would like to focus on the things that are important to them, which are the pattern, the structure, not a tail that is without fault.
Kenny?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Rachel, on this issue. It's an overwhelming vote, and yes, they want this in their standard. There was a lot of controversy between 2 groups when this breed came into CFA. And it looks to me like they're all working together. We have other breeds that we have visible tail faults and allowable to feel something crazy on the tail. I don't see where we're going to harm by doing this, and I wouldn't call it a step backwards. I would call it something that they wanted to begin with, but just didn't put everything into the standard that they initially had planned on doing. And that's what they're doing catch up right now. I've spoken to many of them.
Mike?
I just want to go towards something you said, Melanie, about standards being aspirational, and I entirely agree with that. But they are not saying here that tail faults are something to be bred for. They're still going to, with the next proposal, they're still including them as a penalized. And yes, Tika also has breed-specific things like tail DQs. And if I remember correctly, because this came up when I was showing a Bengal and Tika once, it is at the judge's discretion. It is not an automatic DQ in Tika.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Melanie?
One last thing. We talk about precedent, and I'll speak from my own personal experience as a breeder of one of the breeds that is a parent breed to this breed, or one of the breeds that was used in its formulation, and that's the Egyptian Mau, who overwhelmingly passed a proposal to allow or to remove tail faults as a disqualifier in the Egyptian Mau many years ago. And the board, in their infinite wisdom, chose to override our breed council, and good for them. Because we really should be, I think, sending to the world at large and all the other associations the message that we care about the health and overall vigor of our breeds, and we are not encouraging in any way skeletal abnormalities.
Additional comments? Samantha, you want to comment?
I'm going to actually let Melody talk about this. We've gone over a lot of these points in great detail, and I think she's pretty prepared to argue this.
Okay, Melody?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I appreciate Melanie and Pam's position, but just so everybody knows, I was part of the original committee that drafted the Bengal standard with Marianne Byrne, and I can tell everybody now that it was never our intention to have non-visible tail faults disqualified. Coming from Tika when we drafted it, and bearing in mind, we had very little experience drafting standards. And like many legislators, we made a drafting error. This is an obvious drafting error, which the Breed Council has been trying in the last 4 years to get amended. So I think it's important to bear in mind the original intention of the people that drafted the standard. And secondly, I understand, where Melanie and Pam are saying we're dumbing down the standard, but I don't agree with that. Because as Mike Shelton pointed out, we're still disqualifying visible tail faults and we're penalizing non-visible tail faults. And if you look at this from a logical, reasonable perspective, there is no way that a non-visible tail fault is equivalent to a visible tail fault. We are not rewarding people for showing cats with non-visible tail faults. We are penalizing them. So by changing we are actually clarifying the standard so that it makes more sense. And by this, CFA will be leading the way for the associations to show that we realize that not all tail faults are created the same. And Melanie's brought up several times that this leads to skeletal issues. We had research done, and there was an article written in 2015. Leslie Lyons was a co-author. It was on Japanese bobtails. And the conclusion was, kink tails do not lead to spinal or skeletal deformities. So, and we also ran a poll of all the Breed Council members. Some of them have over 20 years of experience. And when they've been breeding, even though they have tail faults, nobody has reported spinal issues. We have issues like flat chests, like heart issues, cataracts, but there has never been a spinal issue reported or discussed among the Bengal breeders. And we are the caretakers of the breed. Some of us have been doing this for over 20 years. I've been doing it for 16 years. I have cats with tail faults, and yes, I want to breed them out. But the board also needs to realize when you look at the standards of all the cats, only the Bengal calls for a rounded tail tip. The Egyptian now doesn't call for a rounded tail tip. And what happens is when you breed a cat that calls for a rounded tail tip, you get variations on the number of the vertebrae on the tail. And this leads to more prevalence with tail kinks. And again, we have researched this in preparation for this meeting, and there has been no evidence showing that this would lead to detrimental effects on the spine. So when we're talking about promoting the health of the breed, tail faults do not lead to health issues. And let me go back to the point where being a strong standard is being logical, reasonable, not only to exhibitors, but also to the average layperson. And I said before, not all tail faults are the same. So when, say, a spectator goes to a show, they see a perfectly fine Bengal cat, and suddenly the numbers put down nothing, the flats aren't hung, and they're thinking, what happened? Why didn't the cat get anything? A cat show is essentially a beauty contest. We are talking about aesthetics. Even the preface to the CFA standard says, what is a standard? It is not a cat. A standard is an abstract aesthetic ideal, keyword being aesthetic. A non-visible tail fault doesn't affect the aesthetic of the cat, but we want it penalized. It needs to be penalized because nobody wants non-visible tail faults, but it happens with the breed because we are breeding for rounded tails. And finally, if we start throwing out cats with non-visible tail faults, this will be detrimental to the breed because we are essentially narrowing down the gene pool, and that doesn't help anybody. Actually, I have one more point. Right now, CFA is trying to encourage more exhibitors, and I know that we have existing exhibitors now that have cats with non-visible tail faults that would like to put on the ring without the risk and embarrassment of the cat being disqualified. We would just like, but we want the cat penalized. Don't misunderstand us. We don't want tail faults to be rewarded. We want the cats with tail faults to be penalized, make it harder for them to get finals, make it harder for them to get titles. The exhibitor, if he or she is an experienced breeder, knows, yeah, that's probably why the cat didn't final, because it's got a tail fault, but at least it's not disqualified and I still have a chance to bring it up in another ring. When an exhibitor's cat is disqualified, it's very embarrassing. It's happened to me. When we were in miscellaneous, we had a couple of exhibitors that were mortified that their cats were disqualified because it had a non-visible tail fault. And I can honestly say that since Bengals were introduced into CFA, We've never seen a cat with an obvious tail kink in the show hall because we know that's not desirable. But ultimately, we're talking about the aesthetics of the cat. A non-visible tail fault doesn't affect the aesthetics. It doesn't affect the health of the cat. And by clarifying the standard, we are making it stronger because we realize that that not all tail faults are created the same. And like Kenny pointed out, this was voted upon by an overwhelming majority of the breed council members. 85% of the breed council members voted to have this passed 2 years in a row. And you're talking about breed council members that don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but this is the one thing we agree on. This is the one thing we believe should have been written correctly to begin with. And I take responsibility for that because I missed it when we brought the standard to the board. And that's why we have been trying to correct it. And while the board does have this discretion to deny this proposal, I would urge the board that at the Bengal Breed Council in its advisory capacity, we are advising the board. This is what the overwhelming majority of breed council members want. Breed council members that have been breeding for over 20 years, who have the experience with the breed, who know the breed. And it would be to our detriment if we weaken the standard by producing cats with tail faults, and that is not the case at all. So I really hope that the board reconsiders its position from last year and allows this proposal to pass. And
Thank you.
Sammy, if you want to say anything, go ahead.
Thank you, Melody. Sammy, do you want to say anything?
The only thing that I want to reiterate is that these are very muscular tails as well. The Bengal is supposed to be a very muscular cat, and the subjective nature of evaluating variations of normal will always mean that not everyone agrees, but we are attempting to clarify the standard as to when a tail fault is so significant that it impacts the aesthetic. So we still want the visible tail faults DQ'd. We just want the more subjective tail faults to be penalized. That's it for me.
Sammy,
Thank you.
I'm going to give you a closing statement if you have one.
That is my closing statement.
I'll just do a quick recap. Number one,
No,
we're not done. We're not dumbing down the standard.
Melody.
Number two, yes, you got it.
Annette, you have the closing argument on this since it was just your motion.
Moving the question with the right to vote no.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to call for the vote because it's all those in favor, raise your hand. Rachel Anger, Mike Shelton, Kenny Curley, Carol Kuznowski, Mark Hannon, Sharon Roy, Russell Webb. All those opposed, raise your hand. Kathy Calhoun, Melanie Morgan, John Cola, George Eigenhauser, Annette Wilson, Pam Mosier, Paula Noble, Pam Delabar, Ika Hayata. Any abstentions? Kathy Dunham. When you're ready.
That's 7 yes. 9 no. Benson.
Motion fails.
Okay, so we will skip standard change number 2. We will go to standard change number 3, which clarifies the profile description. It changes, I believe this was actually changed last year, to say that the nose may have a slight range from straight. The nose may range from a straight to concave curve. So what they're taking out is may have a slight range and adding a slightly concave curve. The bridge of the nose extends above the eyes. The line of the bridge extends smoothly to the nose tip. The Breed Council was asked by the board last year to clarify the profile description when we voted to remove the term no flat planes from the head description. The proposed profile description should more clearly describe the head and profile. So moved.
Okay, any questions? No questions? Any objections to this motion? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Is Cindy Bird on yet? Or Carol Johnson?
Annette, is that it on?
That's it
Bengals?
for the Bengal.
Melody and Sammy, thank you.
Thank you.
And we can move.
Thank
to-
you.
Annette, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Is Cindy Bird here?
No,
Okay.
not yet. Neither is Carol Johnson for the American Shore Nurse.
Okay.
So we will move to the Devon Rex. Linda Peterson said she didn't see any reason that she needed to be here. They have a standard change that adds descriptions. Descriptions of the use of lavender, platinum, lilac, champagne, natural, sable, and seal. They're adding that to the end of their color descriptions for purposes of clarification and consistency. So instead of lilac, they're going to use the term lavender. Instead of lavender, they're making sepia patterns, they're using platinum. So they're just adding that to their standards, and they consider that a housekeeping issue to provide clarification regarding the use of those terms in their color descriptions. So moved.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Annette? Are there any objections to this motion? Seeing no objections, this motion passes unanimously.
They had one other item on here that relates to the Sphinx outcross, which we'll discuss at the end, although we could discuss it now. So the Sphinx have asked to extend the outcross to the Devon Rex to 12/31/2033. And so the Sphinx, of course, or the Devon Rex voted on it, and it passed 22-1 to continue that extension. So moved.
Questions for Annette? Any objections?
Yeah, it's basically information when we get to the Sphinx vote. Just to acknowledge.
Okay. Any objections?
And vote for them, is there?
Then there's no vote?
No, it's information.
Not till we get to.
Oh, okay, okay, very good.
Yeah, sorry.
Information only. Sorry, you should have picked up on that.
The next ballot is the exotic ballot, and this was informational to the Bree Council members. There's nothing for us to vote on here. It was to provide some information on identifying cats as and reclassifying them, and it's something they'll work on in the central office if they want to go forward. And if it turns out there needs to be something voted on, then we'll bring that back.
Okay,
So we can skip the exotics. Was Lynn Cook on? I don't think she's going to be. Okay, skip. Well, actually Dennis is on. Why don't we do the look terms?
okay.
Okay, so. If you can do whatever you need to do.
He's in.
You got a minute?
Okay.
Whenever, what do you want me to do, Annette?
I'll tell you when to talk.
Okay.
It's my favorite thing to do.
She's
I just want to explain a little bit about how this is going to work. So the La Perm outcross is to domestic cats. And of either long hair or short hair variety. They also allow any color and pattern in their standard. So there's a pattern that's been identified. It occurred somewhere in the Carpathian Mountains or something like that. Dennis can give us a little more history of it. And it's called Carpati. And it's a recognized pattern, which I've only ever seen one, but it was striking when I saw it. So since they want to add it to their standard, I asked them to do a little presentation like this. If the board accepts this for the La Perm standard and we pass the request to add it to their colors and patterns, then in my opinion, other breeds that also don't restrict their cats to specific colors and patterns would then also have it as an acceptable color without having to go through the new color and pattern advancement matrix. Now, breeds that restrict their cats to certain colors or patterns, or say they don't accept every color and pattern, would, if they wanted to add it, would still have to do that. But it seemed to me that if we took a look at this now, we got an understanding of it, see what the cats are going to look like. Then should we pass it for the La Perm proposal, it would kind of give us a more global opportunity to in the future. Okay, so Dennis prepared a very nice presentation here, so I will turn it over to him.
Okay, Dennis.
Thank you, Annette. The Carpati pattern is from the Carpathian Mountain region. In the proposal here, that includes Poland, Ukraine, Czech Republic, Serbia, and that area. The La Perm has a domestic outcross until 2025, and breeders in that area and in Europe in particular fell in love with this pattern and incorporated it into the La Perm breed. It was always the intention of the La Perm breed that color really doesn't matter, or pattern really doesn't matter, because the breed is based on the coat and the type. That's why we only have 1 point on color and pattern. The presentation shows what this one we're seeing right now, how you can tell Carpati pattern. That one red one down there in the center in the middle has white on the back of its ears. That's the easy tell for a Carpati kitten. They end up with white ears, and the development you can see in other further down are there was a blue tabby that we have pictures of all the way through growth. And you can see the shading coming in on this La Perm here. We're asking for the Carpati pattern to be accepted because we want to describe every possible color and pattern, because that was the basis. This is the blue tabby through age, as you see them develop. The proposal as we've got has been accepted by TICA as one of their accepted patterns, but due to their rules, the La Perm breed needs to go through new traits process to get it on the bench. CFA can get this pattern right away. And I know we suffer from a lot of people not showing. And I think this would help us. One of the questions that came up was what's the difference between the Carpati pattern and the roning of the Lycoi? So I put in a table here to describe the differences between the two. The Carpati is mostly a dominant inheritance. So we're not introducing recessives and having to concentrate down. The curl for the La Perm is also dominant. So we're basing the breed on dominant characteristics. We don't have the loss of hair that occurs on the Lycoi, and the other differences are noted there. Rather than go through the entire presentation, I'd like to hear what the board thinks and answer any questions. One thing I will say is this pattern has been in existence in just random bred cats in the Carpathian region for decades. So it's not a new mutation. It's been around for a while. It just got incorporated into the La Perm breed due to people loving the, lack of a better term, flash of the presentation.
Yokiko, you have a question for Dennis? Yokiko, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You have a question for Dennis?
No question, no question. Sorry.
Molly?
First of all, I want to thank Annette for explaining to me clearly. I mean, I think this is a great way of handling our color matrix, et cetera. I like the reasoning behind having us come in with for those breeds that accept everything, and it's a great way to introduce something and to educate us. And Dennis, I want to thank you for the presentation. I found it fascinating. And just amazing with the pictures that you had there. I'm looking forward to seeing actual real life examples of them, but this presentation did a really good job of at least introducing me to the concept. And I think this is a really great start for, you know, basically updating all of our standards to provide descriptions on what we may or may not see there in the ring. So I support this.
Mark?
There are only 2 members of the breed council. There are very few registered. There are very few shown. And I'm all in favor of anything to help them get more of these out.
Desiree, they brought up one of your breeds. You want to speak on this?
Yeah, the Carpati pattern it's not related to Lifebuoy at all. It actually presents itself quite different. It has more to do with the presentation, how it appears. I don't know specifically if it's the same type of roaming as a Lifebuoy, but I have no issue at all with being similar to the
And according to this, it's a dominant versus a recessive gene.
Right.
So
Very good.
fascinating.
If you look there in the picture in the lower right corner, that's actually one with the green background. The other one, those are actually Sphinx.
No.
Yeah, there's a Sphinx breeder who's incorporated this, and on this page is also an American curl, that black one and second one over on the top row.
Well, that's kind of cute.
Yeah.
Let it
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Oh, that one back there. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Why is it?
Okay, are there any additional questions for Dennis?
That's so cool. Look at the little good stuff.
Pam?
Dennis, I don't have a question for you. I just want to say I really like your presentation. And I was introduced to these cats through friends of mine in Romania. And I love this pattern. I just dearly love this pattern.
I did want to make one thing clear about this pattern, and it's in the proposal. This pattern overlays any other color or pattern the cat may have. It is inherited entirely differently from our normal tabby colors and dilutes and an inhibitor gene, all that stuff. This is on an entirely different area of the genome.
Okay, Annette, any closing comments?
Yeah, I do want to thank Dennis for doing this. When he brought it up, I was like, oh, let's think about doing this another way. And he really did put together a nice report. And I have to say, there's a little kitten under the wheel well of a yellow car here. I saw a household pet kitten like that in Australia. And ever since that, I've been entranced by this pattern because I've never seen anything like it before or since. So I hope we see some La Perms in the show ring with this.
Challenge.
And then, and just under his proposal is the actual standard change for the La Perms, which adds the Carpati pattern, and you can read the description of it there. And I just wondered if anybody had any questions about the actual description that would be in the standard about it.
Yokiko, you have a question?
No.
I don't see any questions. Matt. All right, are there any objections to this motion? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously. Dennis, thank you and great job on this. Hang on one second, because Pam may have a. Okay, he's okay. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you to the board.
Okay,
Okay,
Pam.
so we're gonna jump up.
Through the chair to Annette. As I understand it, for those breeds, such as the American Curl that accept cats in all described colors throughout the standards, that this now would be acceptable in those breeds such as the American Curl.
They'd have to ballot it and we'd have to vote on it, but now that we've accepted a description of the pattern. Yes, they wouldn't have to go through
We said
matrix.
No, but they do not have to have it in their standard if they have stated in their standard, all breeds, all colors accepted. You know, even in other standards.
But they do, they don't have blank, they list colors and descriptions under there until we have one place for it.
But it's not,
Okay.
all the colors,
Couple lines.
yeah.
So, thank
Okay,
you.
where are we going next to that?
We're going back up to the beginning, not way beginning, the beginning of the ballot proposals to the American short hairs, if you could bring in Carol Johnson.
Okay,
Okay,
Carol, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for joining us.
okay, so the American short hair, had two proposals of, the first one is adding headings to the color descriptions and reorganizing the colors under those headings. So there's, and they adjusted their band pattern description, so you can kind of take a look at that. Basically, they're just reorganizing how, they haven't added any colors, they haven't deleted any colors, they reorganize them under the headings. And, just quickly, and they took out the word pattern after caddy. So they're just making it a little easier to read through and to follow through. And then they're adding the description for van in one place instead of multiple places. So I don't know if Carol wants to.
Well, let me see if I got questions. Any questions for Carol? Carol, there are no questions. Do you have any comments?
No, I appreciate you being able to present this, and basically this is the type of reorganization that retains some of our historical organization, and then also we think makes a lot more sense than the way that it was. So we would appreciate the board passing it.
Very good. Any objections to this motion? Seeing no objection, this motion passes unanimously. Okay, Annette, you got another one?
Yes, the other one was informational, again, to the Sphinx Breed Council. They asked to extend their outcross also to the American Shorthair breed for additional 10 years. And the American Shorthair breeders voted to accept that. That would be 50% required, which would have been 14, and 23 voted yes.
Okay, we don't need to vote on this because it's
No, we don't need to vote
informational
on
only.
this.
Okay, very good. Carol, do you have anything for the board?
No, I do not.
Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
We don't have the British Shorthair folks yet. Is Bethany Colola on?
No, she's not.
Is she going to be down, you know?
I don't know.
Is Laura Gregory on? We do have Marilee Griswold on from halfway around the world. Now, if you want to skip down to the Scottish Folds.
Okay.
That's number 14. Getting there. Scrolling around there.
Maybe page 127, somewhere in that area.
Yep.
Okay.
Are the page numbers.
Is Marilee on? Did she hear it?
Marilyn.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, Annette.
Okay, so Marilee, we'll just go through these changes and I'll just briefly describe them and then you can either speak to them or just say you'll answer any questions the board members have, okay?
Okay.
So proposal number 1 for the Scottish is to add a statement about straight ears to the general section of the breed standard. So the general section, which comes right under the point scar, will now have a sentence. The Scottish fold cat can be shown with folded ears, straight ears, and with either long hair or short hair in the appropriate class and division. So moved.
Hey, Marilee, do you have a comment or you just want to take questions?
I'll just take questions on that one.
Do you have any questions? No questions. Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously. Bless you.
Excuse me. Okay, standard change number 2 would remove housekeeping matter, the notation of AOB as straight eared. So in the body of the standard, after code and before penalized, they had previously had an AOB class, and they defined it by AOB is straight ear. Well, now they have straight ear as a class. It's no longer AOB, so they are removing that. That's a housekeeping matter.
You want to speak on this or just questions, Marilee?
Just questions for that one.
Okay, next question. No questions. Are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, show rule number, the next ones are show rules. Proposal number 3 would create different divisions for the Scottish straight ear, long hair, and the Scottish straight ear, short hair. So currently, the Scottish breed has a class for Scottish fold long hair and Scottish fold short hair and Scottish straight ear. This will add, they'll divide your division into 2 divisions. There will now be 4 divisions for Scottish. Yes.
Okay, Marilee, comments?
Yes, I'll comment. So I got some numbers from James Simbro, who's great, by the way. And I wanted to just bring up some of those numbers for us today. The Scottish Straight now has been able to be shown for about 1 year and 8 months. In that time, they've been shown in literally every region on the face of the planet. So they've been shown 440 times, with 227 of those being individual cats. For this particular one, breaking them into long and short hairs, going through and tallying up what we had 81 long hair Scottish Straights shown, and 107 short hair Scottish Straights shown. There's a few in there like that had 000s for registration numbers, or had TRNs that I can't tell what their hair length was. But in general, we have quite a bit shown in the long hair and the short hair version of this breed. So I think we have the numbers to support breaking them into those long and short hair divisions.
Thank you. Any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and then number 4, also show rule would create color classes for the straight ear division, mimicking the folded ear divisions. So it would be the solid color, tabby, and white, party color, bicolor, pointed, other Scottish fold colors, and they would no longer have an AOB class. So it would just, the Scottish long hair and straight ears would have the same color class divisions as the Scottish fold long hairs, and the same for the short hair, straight ears, and folded ears.
Okay, Marilee, any comments?
Yes, so the numbers for these, I had to go through and pick them out myself one by one because they aren't broken into color classes, obviously, so far. We had 20 shown in the solid color division, 33 in the tabby division, 123 in the tabby and white division. The party color bicolor was 41. We had 8 pointed folds shown, or pointed straights shown. And then in the other Scottish fold colors, we had 29. So I think we show that we have enough to support the color classes. Essentially what we're doing is just taking the Scottish Straight, mimicking the divisions and the color classes of the folded ear.
Any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously. Marilee, do you have any closing comments at all to the board?
No, that's it. I do appreciate it. I hope that you guys can support the Straits. They've been out in droves over the last, year and a half or so, and I've been pretty excited about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you for joining. Annette, hang on one second, Annette.
One thing I'd like to bring up is maybe we need to stop calling the straight ear Scottish folds. And is there any way the breed council a name for the breed that isn't Scottish fold straight?
So, so that's an interesting question. I think probably the breed council would support it, but I don't know how to, would it actually be a different breed? I mean, how would we go about accomplishing that?
Example, in your new division, Scottish straight ear, short hair division, you have other Scottish fold colors as a color class. So there's a conflict there, and you should probably fix that next time. Well, you would just discuss it amongst yourself, ballot it next year. If it passes, it would come to the board and we'd be here again discussing it. But whether you call them Scottish,
Well, I know in the other organizations, they call them Scottish Straights. So that it's kind of its own little separate breed.
Better than Scottish fold straight ears, which is a big oxymoron. Yeah. So something to think about for your next year ballot.
Okay, sounds great.
And that Bethany's on.
Okay, we can go back to the main cook. There's a lot of jumping.
Bethany, can you hear us?
He's on mute. Oh.
123.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to apologize both to Bethany, to all of you, because we put this together without thinking that people were going to vote multiple times on the same thing and maybe vote for two conflicting things. And depending on how Bethany wants to proceed with this, we may want to reballot this.
Yes. So I think what we're going to go ahead and opt to do is take the one that received the most number of votes and go with the number 2 option, if the board is okay with that. So go ahead and continue registering all eligible Maine Coon cats. If certified pedigrees indicate the cat is registered as a polydactyl, give that the MCP instead of the MCO so that it is recognizable, since that seemed to have the most yes votes of the members that voted in my breed council.
Okay.
That seemed to be the most popular option of the 4 choices that they were given.
It certainly got most number of votes, but other things that, over 30 votes also. But if you think that's what you all want to do, this is a registration issue that because it's basically a registration by pedigree issue. And let me just give you a little bit. The currently CFA registers polydactyl Maine Coons. They just don't ask the question. And most pedigrees don't indicate it. They are disqualified for being shown. However, they can be registered, and there's been no identifier because no one necessarily identifies it. But now there is at least one association that has an EMS code for a polydactyl Maine Coon. So now when we get a registration by pedigree, some cats in it or the cat to be registered may have that identifier. And the question was, what would the Maine Coon Breed Council want to do? And the options were status quo, do what we're doing now and just ignore it, or identify the cat to be registered in some manner, with a couple of options on how to do that, or don't register those cats at all. And what Bethany is saying is that number 2 got the most number of votes, and it's 39 out of how many members voted?
56.
So it's a decent percentage, and since it's a registration rule, only really requires 50%, which would be 28 votes. So what they would do is they register all eligible Maine Coons, but if the certified pedigree, when they're registering by pedigree, indicates the cat itself that's being registered is polydactyl. Grandfather or great grandmother, the cat to be registered is polydactyl. add an identifier to that cat's CFA registration prefix, which would be something central office would have to.
It
Go
may
ahead,
not be
Elaine.
part of the prefix, it may be just part of the color description. Because what, you know, our color, it's numbers. P already stands for patched. Isn't it patched tabby?
If you had a little emoji that had like 6 of them.
Have a 6 in there. Always got no emojis. You can bring one.
Anyway, anyway, perhaps you could work that out with Bethany and how that would work. Okay. Okay, with the bot. Do we just second?
So basically it's keeping the status quo minus giving it now a slight identifier, since everyone, the majority were okay with keeping the status quo, which is we're already registering them as it is.
Okay, you're right, we should vote.
So we're voting on number 2, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you have any questions? Proposal number 2. Are there any objections? Being no objection, motion passes unanimously. So does that mean we're not even entertaining number 1 at all, correct?
That's correct. None of the others.
None of the others?
None of the others.
Bethany.
Excellent. Bethany,
Yep,
thank
Thank you. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your meeting.
Okay, Annette, before you continue, Shelley has left, Ed is now on the clock, and if there's any way we can plan a break within the next 5-10 minutes,
That would be good.
is it okay?
Yes.
All right, then let's do a 10-minute break and come back at 3:16.
Where are we? So we have Cindy Bird for the British Shorthair, so scroll back up to the.
Hi, Cindy, can you hear me?
I can.
We can hear you. What page are we on?
I didn't even pull it yet.
I'm looking at
So
about
does she just
98.
want me to go through and then she can answer questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Annette.
Cindy, this is Annette. We can just go through these. We'll just talk about the past ones. And would you rather answer questions, or if you want to speak to it first?
No, I have no need to speak to it, and I'm appreciative of your work. So just go right ahead. I'll answer any questions.
So the first standard change that passed the British Shorthair Breed Council was to add the words with a crisp texture to the coat. So it will read short, very dense, well-bodied, firm to the touch with a crisp texture. And that passed the Breed Council. So moved.
Okay, any questions for Cindy? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
This change revises the color description of cream to include tabby markings in cats younger than 5 years old. So it says tabby markings are acceptable for cats under 5 years old. And instead of disqualifying for heavy tabby markings, it will penalize for heavy tabby. So moved.
Any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
The third pass standard change defines the AOV class in the standard. It will be added after the colors, other British Shorthair colors. It'll say AOV colors and patterns listed in the AOV color class. So as they're considering during this process, adding colors and patterns, not registrable, they want to be clear what actually can be shown in the AOV color class. And I know all of us who judge cats appreciate that. So that way, any changes of registrations or colors and pattern now in the future will have a place to be exhibited. Any questions on that?
No questions, any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
Hallelujah.
Number 4 did not pass, so we're gonna jump to number 5, which is a registration. This revises the British Shorthair rules for registration to accept chocolate and lilac and as AOB colors for registration. So moved.
Any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
And number 6 changes the disqualify section and the other British Shorthair colors to permit chocolate and lilac British Shorthairs to be shown in the AOB class.
Any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Number 7 passed. It is a show rule, which means it's the color class numbers. So if 5 and 6 pass, which they did, chocolate and lilac AOV colors and patterns in the AOV class in the show rule. It would be under, as you can see, the British Shorthair color class numbers, AOV 25, 98, 99, and it would say chocolate and lilac in the accepted British Shorthair colors, heavy patched, heavy smoke party color. So moved.
Any questions? Any objections? Motion passes unanimously.
Number 8 and 9 did not pass the breed council, so we go to number 10, which is a registration rule. Revising the rules for registration to accept only registration of long hair British Shorthairs with specific registration codes to indicate they're long hairs or have long hairs in the 5 generations before them. This currently has been as a do not accept in registration of cats by pedigree. However, there was a typo in this proposal and an online ballot. So Cindy, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, you'll notice in the first line, there are 2 onlys together, one in parentheses and one just printed. And what was left out was that these long hairs are to be used for breeding of non-British short hair cats only, such as Selkirks and Scottish Folds, and not to be considered for breeding within British programs.
So my feeling is we have a couple of options. We could reballot it with the correct wording, or as it's a registration rule, the board could actually adopt what the wording should be. We could amend this. I guess a question I'd have, did your breed council members understand what it should have been?
Yes, they did.
Kathy Dunham.
I would like to move to add the appropriate wording to this. For British Shorthairs to be long hair British Shorthairs to only be used for breeding purposes in Scottish Folds or Selkirk.
Melanie, second.
Kathy Brown made the motion. For
Did, but I'm not sure what the motion was.
Then Melanie seconded, but we'll get clarification once you get it. George.
Yeah, I've heard from British people for time that they really wish these cats were available to them. And I commend the I commend them for putting this in there and thinking of other breeds. I think it's a very noble thing to do. And I support this.
Yes. The only issue is, since I didn't realize that there was something missing there either, is that we don't currently do this. And we don't have a way to do it, but we could think of a way somehow. I mean, we can register cats for breeding only within their breed. But we don't currently have, I don't believe, I'm staring at you, a way to register cats for breeding only to other breeds.
We'll have to figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Okay,
It'll be a workaround, and this will be one type of registration that will never go through automatically because it's very convoluted. And it's, yeah, we'll think about it.
okay, Kathy Cullen, did you have a question or comment?
So
Well,
what do you want to do? Do you want us to vote on it or not?
Yes.
would it belong on the other breeds?
I'm sorry.
Would this belong on the, like, for instance, the Selkirk as an allowable outcross being long-haired British Shorthair?
There, we do have a breed that already can use long hair British short hair as an outcross. We just don't have a way to register long hair British short.
Right.
That's the issue.
The
Oh.
Selkirks and Scottish
Scottish
Folds
Folds, yeah.
the British short hairs allow them to use us as an outcross.
Yeah, the Scottish Folds voted on that last year.
Yeah, this is just a clarification of how we want a long hair British short hair used in a breeding
They
program.
want them to be CFA registered long hair British short hairs that they're using.
Okay, Mark,
But you haven't polled the affected breed council, right?
They already use us as an outcross. They
He
want
mentioned several breeds specifically.
If they already use. No, they wouldn't be able to use it unless they've already voted to use it. But the Scottish Fold has, and if the Selkirk Rex wanted to, they would have to poll it. But this is making a way for the long hair British short hair, which is currently not showable or registerable in CFA, to be registered as long hair British short hair, but not used in British short hair breeding.
Right.
Or
Long
not.
as those, whatever breed hasn't yet polled on it, can't do it until.
Right, oh,
it's
absolutely, right, right. But we have a breed that does, and so they're using non-CFA registered hair.
polled. Okay.
George,
Yeah, to answer Mark, nothing in the actual proposal, any breed other than British Shorthair. It's in the rationale that they talk about the other breeds. The proposal is just make it available to other breeds. Then it's up to the other breeds to step forward and say, we want to
She
do
made
it.
that clear. Thank you.
Did we miss anything there, Cindy?
I think we're good. I like Kathy's wording.
well, okay, go ahead, Rachel.
Kathy, can we get your wording?
And say it slow. Which was on the fly, so we'll try this again. Thanks. Revise the British rules of registration to accept registration, parentheses, only long hair British for use in Scottish Fold and or Selkirk Rex programs with specific registration codes to indicate they are long hairs or have long hairs in the 5 generations behind them.
Where did you close the parentheses?
Close parentheses behind
Yeah.
Selkirk Rex.
Okay.
I think.
George,
The first time this was mentioned, it was simply other breeds. We didn't call out the specific.
Okay,
breed.
okay, I'm okay with that. Other breeds.
you have it yet? No, I don't
So
have it.
revise the breed rules of registration to accept registration, parentheses, for other breeds, close parentheses, of long hair British short hairs with specific registration codes to indicate they are long hairs or have long hairs in the 5 generations behind them.
I think
Did I cover it, Cindy?
Yes, I think what you want to say is only to be used for other breeds. There was some kind of little glitchy word in there, I think.
You got
The
it.
word breeding in there.
If Cindy had the wording that was missed in here, the original wording, maybe she could send it to us.
Cindy,
I can do that. Yes, I can do that. Not this moment, but yes, I can do it.
By tomorrow morning,
Yes.
Yeah,
can we readdress it?
absolutely. I'll be happy to hold that motion until tomorrow morning.
did I just get clarification? Can we actually proceed with this motion without bringing it back to the breed? George?
Yes, because it's registration and not.
Okay, very good. I heard you talk about it earlier. I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. Okay, and that,
Okay, number 11 is a registration rule to add cinnamon and fawn as unacceptable colors for registration. They already exclude them from exhibiting, so they want to add it to the registration rules. So they would not accept cats to be registered or with the cats in the background, cinnamon and fawn. So moved.
any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next one failed. Next one is not an NA. And number 14, the last one, is information only. It was regarding the Selkirk Recs request to extend the outcross to British Shorthairs to 12/31/2034. And we'll talk about that. We're going to go to the Selkirk Recs shortly, and we can speak to that, but it also passed the Breed Council. The British Shorthair Breed.
Okay, anything else? Cindy, do you have anything for the board?
I would just like to thank Annette for her work at helping me to do this. And thank you all for your consideration.
Cindy, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, we have Laura Barber. Do we have? Laura?
I don't know. Do not have Laura Gregory.
Okay, let's go to the Selkirk then. So there's only one proposal. It's after the ragamuffins. We're gonna do the Selkirk. Laura Barber. Need to be on.
Who is on with us?
Laura Barber.
I do.
Laura Barber, can you hear us?
She's not here.
She is or isn't?
She must have dropped off.
Okay.
Oh, well, I'll just present.
Oh, wait, here she is.
Oh,
I'm sorry. She raised.
Did you promote her?
There she is. She raised her hand. She went to the top of the class. Now she's in.
Laura, can you hear us?
She's on mute.
Laura, you're on mute.
Ah, okay. I'm unmuted. Hello, how is everybody? Thank you. I appreciate the British Shorthair people including us in their thought process earlier on that proposal number 10. That has been very, very kind. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Breed Council. Thank you, board.
Okay, thank you for joining us. Annette?
Yes. So the Selkirk Recs passed one registration rule. And it is to extend the outcross to the British Shorthairs for another 10 years to 12/31/2034.
35.
What?
35.
35.
34.
It says 34 here.
12/31/24.
Yes.
January.
There's a conflict in that. It says 34 in one place and 35 in another.
Yes.
The current date
Well,
for the
it's
extension?
end of
So
January.
End of 24, so starting.
After
for
January.
Yeah, that's the way it is. So it's fine. And the British Shorthair, as we just heard, agreed to it, so moved.
Any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously. Okay, Laura,
Thank you very much for this.
thank you for attending.
You're welcome. It's very important.
So if we could scroll on down to the Sphinx, Cindy Hill is not going to be on the call. She changed her mind. Then I will present it. This is a registration rule that passed the Sphinx Breed Council. Extending the outcross for 10 years for Devon Rex American Shorthair, and domestic Shorthair. And as we heard earlier, the Devon Rex and the American Shorthairs voted to approve this. So moved.
Okay, any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, if Laura Gregory's not on, then we're gonna go up to the ragamuffins and I will go through these. And if there's questions, I will get answers before tonight. Most of them are colored.
What breed you going to?
Ragamuffin, R for a ragamuffin. It's after the Maine Coon. They're actually adding the word kink to the tail reference and disqualify. I know, so disqualify would read crossed eyes, tail kink, or fault. When they added fault, kink dropped, they dropped out kink and they didn't mean to, so they're putting it back in. So moved.
Any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Proposal number 2 is a standard change. It's a housekeeping issue in their penalized section. It's just a grammatical correction, putting a comma after eaters, not a period. So moved.
Any questions? Any objections? Motion passes unanimously.
Number 3 is a standard change, a punctuation correction, changing a semicolon to a comma. So moved.
Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Standard change number 4 changes the order of words describing 2 colors in the shaded colors and patterns. So instead of calling them chinchilla golden and shaded golden, they're going to be golden chinchilla and golden shaded, which are consistent with the changes they made last year in their color names. She did extensive work last year in standardizing color names and patterns in certain order. So moved.
Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Number 5 is a standard change. It updates the tortoiseshell smoke color and under smoke color to be consistent with the tortoiseshell under the party color class. Removes the reference to black tortoiseshell. It takes the word black out. So moved.
Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Standard change number 6 maintains the consistency of colors under the mink and sepia colors by listing chinchilla before shaded for the red mink and cream mink colors. So again, red mink chinchilla, red mink shaded, cream mink chinchilla. So moved.
Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Standard change number 7, for consistency under the sepia colors and patterns, remove the word colors after these 2 subheadings. So moved.
Any objections? Motion passes unanimously.
Number 8 passed. Add colors missed with the 2021 change to calico and bicolor pattern section. And so it's adding golden calico chinchilla, golden calico shaded, blue golden calico chinchilla, blue golden calico shaded. So moved.
Any objections? Seeing no objections, motion passes unanimously.
So I just want to mention something about the work she's done last year and this year and all these color names. And I asked her, why we got to name all these colors? And she said it really helps people who are registering their cats to get the name right. And get it in a certain order. Hopefully it's the same order they actually register the cat names in. So, you know, the color, then the pattern, and then this, then that, and so on. And she's really done a ton of work on that. And it's a really good reference to use in the standard. The ragamuffin color description or color names are a good reference. All right. We have gone through everything except our advancing breeds, although we do have for the toy bob, the Japanese bobtail. All right, we're gonna go up there. Is Mary Ann Clark on? I don't think she's gonna join. So I promised I would read this for her because it's important to the breeders. under today. So they are actually registering objection to the advancement request by the toy box. And since the toy box aren't here yet, we might as well do this. So information to the board. And it's a reverse vote, so 100% of the people voted no in the request by the toy bobs to advance. This follows the same objection they had when the breed was accepted. The Japanese Bobtail Breed Council has concerns about waiving longstanding rules for new breed advancement for the toy bobs. Our main concern, as we already expressed when the toy bobs asked for miscellaneous, is the lookalike factor. When the toy bobs submitted their application for recognition, it was asserted that the tail gene was different than the already recognized breeds of Japanese bobtails, American bobtails, and Manx. However, according to Dr. Leslie Lyons at the University of Missouri, in an email dated July 25th, 2021, the study is not complete and no paper has been published to prove this. Dr. Lyons stated that some toy bobs do have the Japanese bobtail tail mutation, others do not. She also stated the breed does not want the JBT tail mutation. We ask that DNA testing be done on registered toy bobs and new registrations to eliminate any question of the tail mutation. Therefore, they should not be advanced until the tail mutation is proven to be different in all registered toy bobs. It was a consensus of a non-official poll of the Japanese Bobtail Breed Council that there have not been enough toy bobs shown in the past 2 years to merit advancement in any way. We recognize there have not been as many shows, but that's no reason to waive requirements. The lack of shows has caused issues affecting all breeds in many ways, including titles and awards. We feel that advancing them at this time would be very unfair to every breed who has had to prove their merit. The toy bob is supposed to be a small cat. Some of our members feel the toy bobs that they have seen do not fit the term small, but appear to be the same size as Japanese bobtails, thereby making them more of a lookalike. Even though breeding for a smaller toy bob may make them more distinct from Japanese bobtails, the miniaturization of any breed should be a concern for the health of the breed. And so that's just read in, and you can take it into consideration when considering the advancement of the toy box. And that is the Japanese. So we will go maybe to the library. Oh, were we gonna talk about how we're gonna on advancing?
About Siberians and that.
Huh?
When are we doing Siberians?
And we have to wait for Iris to be on.
We'll do that at 5
She wanted to
o'clock,
be on
right?
at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
May not be here. Probably.
I know, but if they set up the toy bobs, we could jump to that.
And then go to dinner.
We're gonna,
She's, I mean, I'm comfortable presenting it, but she was adamant she wanted to present it.
Can somebody call her and see if she's available earlier?
She's in Malaysia.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I could try messaging her, but I don't. Yes, we could do other things.
Yeah, on the agenda.
Okay, so anyway, should we
Go
do
ahead.
the lifeline?
You should do the like coin.
sure.
All right, so now you jump back up. And actually, I have something else on my report also. to get through this. So we're not done yet. Okay, and there's a summary here that I put together. It's after the toy summary, there is a likewise summary. It says likewise summary, January 2023. And it's number 5 on my action items. It's in the compiled report.
Page,
Or you can bring it up separately. on
Yeah,
top of
yeah,
it.
I found it.
Somewhere around page 81.
Thank you.
Page one.
81.
Page.
Page
7,
81. Yeah.
Higher pages for
It's gonna be in that.
So the breed committee chair for the LIFECOI is Desiree Bobby. She's here in the room. And the breed committee has requested that the breed advance from provisional status to championship status effective May 1st, 2023. I provided a summary of the current entry and registration statistics. And just some facts about it. The breed was accepted May 1st, 2018. They were in provisional status until May 1st last year, last February, we advanced them to provision. There are 24 breeders, and I know there's more, but there was 24 that I could identify from the data I had, with several additional who registered by pedigree in 2022. There are 395 registered Lycoi, of which 95 were registered by pedigree. That's an increase of 98 since December 2021. We had 183 entered in present cats, of which were about 100 unique cats shown in all regions, including the ID. There are 10 members of the breed committee, and the World Lycoi Association Breed Club is in good standing with CFA. The last time they changed their standard was last year, and that's also when they the board accepted adding all colors and patterns. In the judges' reports, which is separate here, its concerns were revolved around the standard and cats being shown not meeting the standard, specifically in eye shape and head type. They commented that it was difficult to see more roaming on a woman cat. And there was lack of consistency to the standard on that. There were concerns about condition in some instances with bare patches of hair. Several shows had cats entered but not present, and those cats are not counted in the charts we have. So in the first chart is a year's worth of data. So it's from where we ended with data the previous year as a summary of cats present by region, by year. And you can see that the first 2 years when they were miscellaneous, they had quite a few cats being shown. And then we had COVID, you can see that number 1 there. And then after COVID, they had 41 cats, and last year only 33 cats shown. Although that's obviously not a full season since we're the end of 2023. Of the 183 cats, 100 were unique cats. So to count unique cats, there's no real way that I can figure out how to count unique cats in these pivot tables. So I count them by hand. Then we have the registration data, which is a summary of category prefixes since the breed was accepted. So that's what I have, and I think Desiree might want to make a presentation or speak to the board.
Desiree, you want to come up to the table? Join us.
Hi, thank you for your consideration of the Lycoi. I think everyone here is familiar enough with them, so I don't really have too much to say. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them.
Does anybody have any questions for Desiree? No questions. Okay. All right. I guess we're going to go through the motion.
Comments. I don't
So-
know questions, I have comments.
Okay, go ahead.
Love you to death, you know that, but I've been straight up about this since last year. I don't argue that this breed is unique. But it was unique to me as it was presented to this board, which was as a werewolf cat, which kind of goes hand in hand with a blackish cat with roaming. You were only advanced a year ago. And when you, at that same time as you were advanced, in my opinion, you took a step backwards into what, for me, made this breed something very special. So in the last year, we really haven't seen a significant number of examples of the breed, and the ones that we've seen have not, in my opinion, been very consistent in type. It's the breed standard continues to undergo substantial revisions, although this year we seem to have fine-tuned it somewhat. But we're not seeing the roaming as much on the cats that aren't in the black. The white, to me, was a huge mistake. And while I think this breed could be a wonderful asset and be very, very unique, I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that we've extended to all these other colors, et cetera. And for that reason, although I wish you all the best, I won't be supporting this.
Okay. Kenny?
I like that breed a lot. I'm gonna support it.
George?
I like that breed a lot. I'm gonna support it. I've seen a lot of breeds come through the system, and I understand that there are concerns about consistency as they're occurring right now. But the biggest improvement in consistency and look comes when you're actually in competition. You know, when it's just a friendly, take a look at my cat kind of a show. It's not as intense. The intensity of competition really helps forge a better cat. So I am not concerned. I think if we move them into championship and they lose, they'll figure it out.
Kathy Calhoun?
Okay, so I have two of these little darlings. I love the breed. I think that they're awesome. Was also not in favor of any other color other than black, and Desiree knows this oh well too well. But the fact of the matter is, we're over that. We passed it. We're done. This is it. So, you know, I'm going to support them. I think there's time. I think that you'll see more when you can actually compete with all the other cats on the same level.
Pam Delbar?
In the past 3 years, we have seen 3 of these cats in all of Europe. Based upon that, I cannot support advancement at this time.
Any other comments? All right, I'm gonna call, if you're in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Rachel Anger, Mike Shelton, Kenny Curley, Carol Krasnowski, Kathy Dunham, Paula Noble, Mark Cannon, Pam Mosier, Annette Wilson, George Eigenhauser, Sharon Roy, Kathy Calhoun, Russell Webb. If you're opposed, raise your hand. Melanie Morgan, John Kalila, Pam Delabar. Any abstentions? Yukika Hayata, if you're in favor, raise your hand.
Yes. I support.
Thank you.
That's 14 yes, 3 no, 0 abstentions.
Motion passed.
Don't be changing your standard.
Thank you, Desiree.
Get those suckers out.
Hey, Annette.
Do you have a way to get a hold of Judy?
Yeah, I can text her. She said Margot was, I think Margot's here already.
Margot's here?
But she wasn't.
I thought you said she wasn't.
She said she's waiting for me. I said, is Margot coming? She said, yes, she is.
Okay, here's cut to the chase. Can they get the cats on?
Okay,
Sorry, I'm just like.
Good that Margot's coming.
Yes, okay, well, we're waiting for that. I have one more thing on my, one more thing. There's always one more thing, if you notice it. Okay. The Kamani, we have an issue with the Kamani. The Kamani is in miscellaneous status. The Kamani Breed Committee had 1 member as of August 1st last year. And that member declared for committee chair and then didn't vote. Don't laugh. This is serious.
Well, no, it's suspended.
So there's only 1 member of the Breed Council. They didn't vote for themselves. Last year, in calendar year 2022, 8 Kamani were registered and 6 unique cats were shown in the 2021-22 show season. And none have been shown in the current show season. So I don't know what the status is going to be of the person who is the sole member of the breed committee, which does not have a chair, but I would be willing, I know someone who breeds Kamani that has registered like 3 or 4 litters with CFA last year, but they haven't been showing or registering their adults, or, their cats in CFA. I briefly mentioned to her at a show where we were both exhibiting, would you be at all interested in joining the breed committee? Because we may have an issue. And she seemed okay with it, but I couldn't really say anymore because we hadn't had our December meeting. So she would have to qualify for the breed committee. And if she would, and she did, then I could ask that she be appointed chair at the June meeting. But I don't want to talk to her if this is all going somewhere else. So I don't know how else to beat around the bush about this.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I think I know who you're referring to. And I believe you should go ahead and see what you can do. Talk to her.
Okay, and if that doesn't work, if anybody else knows of somebody who would be qualified for the breed committee, that would be willing to maybe take this on, or we go without a chair for a year and see if things change somehow. Because I believe there's Kamani shown in Thailand.
Yeah.
But I don't know the breeders, and none of them have joined the breed committee, but they may not know about it, so.
But
Go ahead. Dan. Go ahead.
the secretary of the Kalmany Club, which is a Region 9 club, is going to school right now, and he would also be possible.
To join.
To
If we can
join.
Beef up the committee,
Yeah,
so I need some direction.
Well, are there any objections to having Annette discuss, have the conversation?
No.
Okay, proceed. Annette, you can do your next agenda item,
I can do that.
Breeder Education Committee.
Breeder education. Oh, I could.
So if everybody, if everybody is wondering what's happening today, we are not ending before 6 o'clock. We're gonna work until 6 so we can cut down on tomorrow's
Okay.
schedule.
I get confused when I skip a line.
Okay. So you're gonna, agenda item 20, Breeder Education Committee. Okay, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. So the committee chairs are Carissa Altschul and Leanne Rupi. And they have one action item. This is the Breeder Education Committee, which is working on ways to help educate newer breeders. And they would like the board to approve a 1 to 2 hour roundtable discussion Thursday afternoon during the annual. We would like this to be scheduled maybe between 3 and 5, and the audience would be open to those breeders who might be there, might be interested in participating.
Mark? Thank you. Well, okay. So Mark made the motion, George second. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just asking Emily, is there time on Thursday afternoon? I mean, obviously there's a board meeting, but
Well, it conflicts with dog registration, the Every Cat Symposium. There's gonna be a conflict no matter what on Thursday. The judge's workshop is Thursday night. So there's no good time really on Thursday.
She suggested Saturday and Carissa said no.
We can provide her space.
okay.
Sharon?
Yeah, this is actually for Elena. Thank you for bringing this up. How does the breed council go about getting a time slot to have a breed council meeting? I was asked that by the Abbey people and said
For a couple of years prior to COVID, or at least a year or two, we had indicated that we're not going to be able to continue providing meeting space for breed councils. Or at least because some breed council, most of them, they would have 3 or 4 people, and we were reserving 5 and 6 meeting rooms, which it impacts our ability to do things. So we were able to accomplish that last year. We did not contract for the numerous breakout rooms for Saturday this year. So we could probably accommodate 1 or 2 of the larger ones. But most of the breed councils, there's plenty of space that they could meet informally. They can meet for lunch, breakfast. Well, if there's only 4 or 5 people, they don't need a meeting room.
People come for this, so I should let the breed council secretaries know that.
Yes. Okay, well, we've been talking about it for several years. I guess they just it's not a new.
Okay, so basically there'll be other things in conflict, but space could be provided. For them.
Okay, well, we talk about breeder education, we're talking about breed council,
Breeder education,
the
right?
breeder education.
Yeah.
We can provide them the space, yes.
Are there any other questions or comments? So Eileen, Carissa knows she's not gonna have an exclusive meeting. There's no other meetings going on. It's gonna be going on while other things are happening. Okay, very good. Okay, any objections? Okay, seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Anything else in that? No, we're good.
Until we get to the toy box.
What time do you want to do toy box? So we
I
can,
want to do it now. I wonder if she'd be willing to come down and at least go through her standards.
Is she here?
Yes. But maybe getting settled.
so, all right, so it may take her some time to come down.
To central office.
Yep.
The ballroom.
Eileen? We're gonna do central office.
So the first one is simply a Cheryl clarification for one that was passed in December. We refer to the universal closing or the common closing date, wherever you want to call it, for regions 1 through 7, and refer to central office time. And I'm just asking that it be modified to specifically state Eastern time. There is no such thing as central office time.
George?
Second.
I had Kenny as a second.
So there's a board action item, formal, for all shows in 1 through 7, excluding Hawaii. All shows must close to entries no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern time on the Monday before the opening of the show. Shows may close to entries prior to that time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? George made the motion, Kenny seconded. Any comments? Okay, any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Number 2 is an amendment to CFA's bylaws regarding annual meetings. You know that I need to go through this because we've talked about it several times about the difficulties we've been having for quite some time about finding an appropriate meeting venue for our annual meeting within a reasonable price. So what we have talked about, and I believe what the board is in favor of doing, is providing a bit of flexibility to find a location, and that flexibility would consist of not having to go from region 1 through 7, changing every year, but to give the flexibility that we still move around the country, but it's not in such a structured fashion. I think I presented this in October, and I think George had some issues with the wording. His concern was that if it's not stated in the bylaw that we have to change locations across the country, that it will end up being in maybe one location. And that could very much affect the overall viewpoint of the delegation. We just don't want to have it in one particular region. So we came up with this wording, and I think George was as happy with it as he can be.
Go ahead, George.
And essentially what it's doing is just splitting the US into 3 sections: the East, the Central, and the West. And that we would rotate between those 3 areas within a 7-year time frame. And we would have to hit each area at least once within the 7 years. And we also would have the flexibility of staying in one location for 2 years, for more than 1 year. So, and what this does, he said, we have region 1 and region 7, for instance. Region 1 is a very expensive area to find a hotel. Region 7, not so much. So you have, let's say, Philadelphia in region 1, and you have Maryland in region 7. They're not that far apart, but the difference in cost can be significant enough. And the same thing exists in the center of the country between regions 4, 6, and 3. What's that I do here?
So east would be 1, 4, and 7, central 3 and 6, and the west 2 and 5.
George?
Yeah, as I told him, I don't love it, but she fixed it enough that I'm not gonna object to it, so. If you're looking for somebody to introduce this on the floor of the annual, you might want to ask Cindy or somebody. Because I don't necessarily love enough to pitch it. But I'm gonna roll over and play dead on this one.
Okay, does anybody have any words of wisdom for Aline and George on this one? All right, so,
I'll move we adopt the action item. listed in the
all right,
report.
do I have a second? Is that Carol?
Yes.
Thanks, Carol. All right. Any additional comments? Any objections?
Call the vote so I can abstain.
Gee, thanks. All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. Rachel Anger, Pam Delabar, Kenny Curley, Carol Krasnowski, Kathy Dunham, Paula Noble, Mark Hannon, Pam Mosier, Annette Wilson, Sharon Roy, John Kalula, Melanie Morgan, Kathy Calhoun, Russell Webb. Any objections, raise your hand. Any abstentions, raise your hand. Mike Shelton, George Eichenhauser. Yokiko Hayata, are you a yes?
I agree.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
I can invite you all to Amsterdam.
Yeah.
You have fun time.
All right,
So that's 15 yes, 0 no, 2 abstentions.
motion passes.
Number 3, it's simply something that was brought to my attention that I then wanted to bring to your attention, that there may need to be a clarification in the bylaws regarding the region of residence of someone declaring for office at the club's assigned region. It's outlined here. Essentially, it doesn't say in plain language anywhere that the person declaring for an office has to live in the region for which they're declaring to be a regional director. And maybe that's okay. But if not, then the bylaws could be amended, or at least brought to the delegation for them to make a decision. And this will be a good year to do this because regional director declarations will be next year. So if it's not fixed, I shouldn't say fixed, if it's not addressed this year, we'll be going through another election process.
Okay. We're gonna have somebody make a motion on this.
So move.
Pam Delbert, can I have a second?
Carol.
Thank you. All right, discussion.
What is the actual motion? We don't have any wording in front of us for changing the bylaws.
It's right here. Yeah, except the changes articles. There's the underline and the strikeout.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
all
didn't
on here. Yep. Any other comments or questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Okay, Aline?
Okay. The next one is again regarding region of residence, except this time it has to do with the club's assigned region. I think this was a bit in conjunction with the first one presented because a declared candidate has to belong to a club assigned to the region that they're declaring for. But it goes a little bit further than that because we assign a club to the residence of the secretary. We need a physical street address for a club secretary. They could have a PO box, but it could be in a different region. There are some regions that there's that line and you've got people that are very close to that border. So this would simply make it more clear that it has to be the physical address versus the mailing address. And as I've indicated here, there are some people that do not want us, they don't want their PO box, their street address publicized for a variety of reasons. we don't have to include that in our files. All we would be doing is, if a club secretary should indicate I have a new address and it's this PO box, we would ask them for what is the physical street address. We would record the PO box, but we would confirm that the physical mailing address has not changed region. We can do that as a policy change, or if you wish, it could be a bylaw amendment to the bylaws.
George?
Yeah, when Cindy ran this by me, I had a problem with it, and this doesn't fix it. Physical address is not a legal term. If you want to know where somebody lives, you call it a residence or you call it a domicile. But we're creating a legal document here. We should use the kind of wording a New York lawyer would use. And physical address is not. So, you know, we do the domicile of the secretary, the physical residence address of the secretary. I'd like to see the word residence or domicile in there somewhere.
Okay, so I don't even have anybody making a motion on this.
So
Kenny will second. All right, who made the motion? All right, Kathy Dunham made the motion. Okay, Kenny second. Kathy, since you made the motion, do you want to amend the motion as to what George is recommending?
yes, I will amend the motion to add physical residence address.
Right, and I believe it appears in like 3 places, so.
Okay. In all locations.
So you're changing it to domicile or
Or physical
Okay.
residence address.
Physical residence, okay. Mike?
I'm just asking, George, since you brought up, we should do this like a quote unquote New York lawyer would do it. Do we know that that wording confirms?
We have a New York lawyer right there.
That's very convenient.
Okay. Ed?
Yeah, I would, given the fact that people can live in different places for parts of the year, I would use the term primary residence.
I will accept that wording
That sounds
in all appropriate locations.
What is the word?
Primary residence.
Primary residence. And my second, I would accept amendment as well.
Okay, thank you. So it's been amended. Are you all set? Primary, okay, I get the thumbs up. Any additional comments or questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Aline, all 3 of these are going to be presented at the annual by the Legal Advisory Committee, and then the committee can decide who's going to present it at the annual. So it could be Cindy, George, or Ed. I think all 3 of you are on the committee. Okay, Aline, anything further?
No.
Okay, we are going to go back to Annette.
I have a few minutes just to chat with them. So
You want to chat with them?
yeah, just to see what.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the Toy Bob standard changes with Gigi, the committee chair. And then if we have time, we'll go down and see the cats. She can do her presentation, but we have to be back here then. They're down in the Erie room
You gotta
at
be back.
5 o'clock for the Siberian presentation. If doesn't look like we're gonna have time to go down there, see the cats and give a presentation, then we can go back, cycle back there for that after.
After the Siberian presentation.
Sorry.
Okay, and also when we present the advancement, we have to go into
After we
executive,
see the cat.
right, after we see it, that's correct. Yep,
Okay, so if you would all, I'm sorry, this is Gigi Guerrero. And she's the committee chair for the Toy Bob. Margot Hill was the previous committee chair. She's the president of the Toy Bob. Okay, so we're gonna go through your standard changes first. Okay, so either see up there. If you want to come up there, Gigi.
yeah, please come to the table.
So the way it will work is we'll go through each change to the standard and then the board, if they have any questions, they'll ask questions and maybe discuss it, and then we vote on each one of those changes. There it goes.
Yep.
So scroll down to. How about miscellaneous? And the standard changes.
About page 140.
Okay, the first change is to update the point score for eyes, ears, profile, and neck. Update and remove the repetitive sentence in the general description. So the Toy Bob have broken down each of their, the point score, which is at the top of the standard, in the usual head, body, color, and so on, but they've taken each subheading and broken it down further. So they're making some slight changes to that. They're adding a point to eyes. They're taking a point from ears, from profile. And then in the general description, there was a repetitive paragraph in there, so they're removing that. And adding that the short bob tail consists, instead of several pink vertebrae, one or more pink vertebrae. And that adding that they reach full maturity at 1.5 years with little to no size difference between both sexes, and ideally should retain a kitten-like appearance as adults. So moved.
Okay, questions? Discussion or comments? You want to add any comments?
No.
Okay.
So, yes, just to clarify some items, because as we transfer the standards originally from WCF, it was really broken down into very simple way of defining the points and not always I should say, leaving a lot of room to discussion and kind of interpretation of the standards. So our way to update the standards was to really clarify some issues that or feedbacks that the judges had. Well, you know, if the points were this and this, you know, wouldn't the tail be this and this? So we actually collected the entire feedback by showing the cats over the 4 years and implementing into the standards to make more clear and understandable to be able for the judges to judge and address those important issues or important feature of the cat. So it wasn't really a changes of the standard. I think some judges had the perception it was just more clarification, adding more clarification to the points and the specific features of every single part of the body of the cat.
Okay, thank you for that information. Annette, do you have any comments or questions?
No, but it's considered, it's changed to the standard, so we have to vote.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, of course.
Okay, so just as a reminder, Annette, you have a standing motion on all these and
Right.
Rachel has a standing second.
Right.
Okay. Are there any objections to this motion? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Interchange number 2 updates the head shape and muzzle sections. It added the word square in front of muzzle and after gently rounded. So ending in a short, gently rounded square muzzle. And says that jowls are often prominent in adult males, so adds the word often. And then for muzzle, which is also separate, separately identified or called out, it says relatively short, square shaped in appearance, gently rounded contours. So it takes out rounded with gentle contours and adds square shaped in appearance with gently rounded contours.
Melanie,
Do we want to see if they have any comments?
Well, let's
Go ahead.
go for your
All
question
right,
first.
so I appreciate the fact that putting together a standard that makes sense for all of us, especially when you're getting all sorts of sometimes conflicting input is a labor of love. And I thank you for all of that. I am not sure that this clarifies what I would be looking for in head shape or muzzle. In fact, I think it, for me, is more confusing. I've never seen a square that was round. And using words like relatively, to me, makes me very somewhat, well, makes me uncomfortable. So I'm not real comfortable with this revision in terms of the fact that it is actually clarifying what I'm supposed to be seeing when I turn around and look in a cage at head structure, so.
Okay, Annette?
I agree. And I think Gigi and I talked about this, that round and square are two opposite ends of geometry.
But I'm sorry, but you can have a square that has rounded.
Okay, let me finish. So while I don't have as much of an issue with the whole head being maybe square shaped in appearance, although that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing rounded muzzles, not round muzzles, but rounded muzzles, and I'm not seeing square muzzles on the cats. So I personally can't support this. I think if you mean the muzzle is defined by being square, but the corners are rounded, then it needs to say that, but I'm not sure you could draw a picture of all three of those different things very well. That's my opinion. Which,
Okay, any additional questions? Comments? Would you like to respond?
Would there be another word to describe it, like box theme?
I thought it was fine the way it was before it was
Yeah.
changed, but
Right.
boxing would be better. What I think you mean is that there's a definition from the muzzle, the cheekbones to the muzzle.
Yes.
Right.
But squared isn't the way to say that. So we can help you with that maybe next time. With some ideas, and you can look at it.
Yeah,
And
and we
define
can
muzzles
definitely
and
leave
get
that,
some like firm.
we can definitely leave that part as is, yeah. Because it's something that it should like belong, for now.
So do you want to withdraw this, or do you want me to call on the motion?
Let's withdraw that. Well, so we can.
Annette, do you agree?
I mean, can you propose some changes in terms of the words?
I can't, first of all, I can't hear you, but
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I don't think we withdraw standard changes, do we? Don't we vote it up or down?
we vote.
on that?
We vote for it? Okay,
Um,
all right. Any additional comments? Kenny?
Can this be amended?
No.
Okay.
No. And I don't know, I mean, if we voted it down, it's still gonna say jowls are prominent in adult males. We all understand jowls. I mean, everybody knows for them or not, lack of them or whatever. And I think it still reads okay. It would be short with short, rounded contours following the wedge line in proportion to the face. I mean, when you start bringing in a wedge in addition to squares and rounds, I mean, then, you know,
We got too many shapes going on.
yeah. So I think we maybe need to take a look at the whole description.
Okay, I'll call the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, Yukika Hayata, Melanie Morgan, John.
Yes, I support.
George Eichenhouse. Annette Wilson, Pam Mosier, Mark Hannon, Paula Noble, Kathy Dunham, Carol Krasnowski, Mike Shelton, Pam Delabar. If you're an abstention, raise your hand. Russell Webb, Kathy Calhoun, Sharon Roy, Kenny Curley. Do we know, and Rachel Anger? Is Yukika a no?
She was a yes.
She was a yes?
I don't think she knew.
I don't think she knew. I was- Yukiko, are you a yes, no, or an abstention?
Yes.
Thank you. 3 times.
It's the motion to leave it alone.
It won't change. The motion is to accept this change.
Oh, makes me no.
We're back to standard change.
Okay, Rachel, when
If
you're
you
ready.
support the standard change, you vote yes, and if you don't, you vote no.
No.
Okay, so that's 1 yes, 12 no, 4 abstentions.
Motion fails. So we go back to what the standard is. Yeah.
And actually, since we're gonna be looking at the cats later, that would be your chance to look at them and come up with some ideas. So the standard change number 3 updates the eyes, ears, profile, neck, and torso descriptions. Originally, this was one whole huge redo of the standard. We broke it into parts for this very reason, in case something, but then at some point, how many parts can you break it into? So eyes must be large, and what they've added is to very large, and they've added a wide set as preferred. Ears, they removed the words high on the head. They left one ear width apart at the base. Added, mature males may have more width between the ear base. In profile, they added the phrase "a full forehead is preferable." To neck, they removed "and" from short and thick, and now it will read short, thick, with an almost no neck appearance. And in torso, they added a sentence at the end: "A primordial pouch is common and may appear prominent on their compact body. This is not a sign of obesity." So moved.
Okay, questions? Melanie?
There's a typo in ear bases. I don't think you can fix it though, am I right?
I don't know what you mean, because I can't hear you.
Ears,
Ears.
look between ear base, but it's ear bases. But I don't think you can fix it.
Okay, can you come and point it out to me?
I can.
Like in the line of the ear. That's ear basin.
Between the ear bases.
It should be ear base, I guess.
Mature males may have more width between the bases of the ear, which is the ear bases.
Yeah, I think
I'm
it's
not
right.
changing, there's nothing to change. May not be the,
Okay, so back to the only, I'm mostly supportive of these changes. I have a little bit of an issue of the comment, "This is not a sign of obesity." I would hope that our judges can determine what is obesity or not and what a primordial pouch is. So I'm not a fan of putting instructions like that into a standard, but not enough to not support this.
Okay, additional, Pam Delbar?
I have a few problems with the way that they're talking about the ear set. It is a higher ear set. And 1 ear width apart takes us back to the Maine Coon standard. And if you're basing it upon the breadth of the ear at the base, then you have supposed to have if you look at the pictures of the handout,
They don't have a proper.
the ear set does not match what's being stated on the requested change to the standard. And if the ears are different, you're not looking at a Siamese type ear set or a Berman type ear set. This is really rather unique.
Additional questions? Comments? Do you have any comments?
I would just have a comment. So now you can see what we were going through. A lot of judges question the same thing over and over. One judge would say, well, they're not high on the head, so this should be removed. Well, maybe you should use this and this, specific description. So it is a unique looking head, and therefore we were going back and forth with the feedback and the changes. So please feel free, look at the cats and come up with some better description that will be universal.
Okay. Annette, do you have any closing comments?
no, I think I would actually be all right with this, because as you look at them, I don't know that high on the head to me means Cornish regs, These aren't,
That's alert.
these aren't that high. But in some cases they're less than an ear's width apart of the base. I think we haven't maybe seen enough of them yet. But again, maybe that's something, just additional adjustment down the road. I actually like this taking out high on the head, because I see more of these not having ears high on the head. They're not low either, but
Pam Delbar?
I have judged at least 30 to 50 of these in Russia.
were they entered in a CFA show?
No, they were entered in an ASC show where I was guest judging. And The ear set is not, the ear set is basically what they have pictured here on these examples.
So the pictures on the front, not necessarily the pictures further in here. Like,
Which is not what they're
I mean,
describing.
we could argue this all day.
Okay. But I want it known that we're not just looking at a cat that we have to all of a sudden be acquainted with. Several of us have handled many of these.
Okay, I'm gonna call for the vote. All those in favor? Go ahead.
The cats that you've handled in Russia, they used to do a lot of Thai outcrossing, so the ears a few years ago were a little higher in the head. But since they've been using domestics, the ears have shifted more to what you're seeing in the photos and what you're seeing here in the United States.
Because, you know, the
If
cats-
my answer.
Okay, go ahead.
I live in Finland, so I'm not going to Russia a lot lately. Okay. But when I was being taught about these cats, and I must admit that was the first time I had ever handled, especially a great amount of these cats. And they were all pointed. The ties were not being used as outcrosses at the time. They were
Well,
doing
I beg to
the
differ.
domestic to
Okay,
the,
so maybe we could
yeah,
move
okay,
on to the issue.
Yeah, we're,
moving right along.
George, you are closing this out. Last comment.
I'm gonna vote yes anyway, but when you're expressing a breed standard, don't tell us what you're breeding to and what you're getting. Tell us what you want in the ideal cat.
Right, I agree 100%.
Okay, I'm calling for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Rachel Anger, Pam Delabar, Mike Shelton, Kenny Curley, Carol Kuznowski, Kathy Dunham, Mark Cannon, Pam Mosier, Annette Wilson, George Eigenhauser, Sharon Roy, John Pagula, Melanie Morgan, Kathy Calhoun, Russell Webb, Yukiko Hayata. All those opposed, raise your hand. Any abstentions? Paula Noble. Okay, Rachel, when you're ready,
That's 16, yes, 0, no, 1 abstention.
motion passes.
Okay, standard change number 4 updates the legs and feet and the tail descriptions. It adds a sentence to the end of the description for legs and feet to allow for when unsure, the hind legs may go toe out, should not be taken as a fault. And the tail, it adds, it'll read bobbed with 1 or more kinks, adding 1 or more. And then, but may appear and feel straight. That's all.
Okay, question, Melanie?
I have a major problem when you include instructions about towing out, again, how to judge on in a standard. Yeah, we all know that cats slip and slide on there. When you have a cat that's cowhocked, there are ways to check it, but it certainly does not belong here, in my opinion. And I'm now totally confused about the tails.
You're not what?
I'm now totally confused about the tails with this description, so.
Pam Delabar?
I was actually gonna say, I like their description of the tail. I thought it was right on.
Okay,
I can make a comment of the tail because the kinks are very hard to notice until you feel the tail. So you literally have to pull the tail in order to feel the kinks. The straight tail appearance can be shown by just looking at the tail. It doesn't really necessarily tell you there's a kink, which is the dominant feature of the breed. So again, if the judge doesn't feel the tail, it will appear as a straight. So that was the description.
okay, any additional questions? George?
Yeah, I'm fine with the tail section, but like Melanie, I have problems with the change to the leg feet section. We don't want cow-hocked cats. And you can say it's not a fault, but it is. And giving an instruction that, well, if you're unsure, That's for judges to work out. That's not necessarily something that belongs in the breed standard.
Well, that was actually suggested by a judge, to add that, he said it's in the Norwegian standard. And it was because he noticed that.
I mean, the forest cat group right here.
Okay, well, that's what he told. We didn't been mistaken.
Well, okay,
Michael.
Mike,
Addressing last things first, the forest cat standard specifically says the front legs will toe out, not the hind legs. And speaking as not a judge, I am confused, even after your explanation, when you're saying you have to pull on the tail to feel the kinks, it specifically says it may feel straight. And if you have to feel the kinks, I don't understand how feeling the kinks and feel straight go together.
Well, the thing with this breed is that there's a lot of variables with the tail. There's no consistency. Every tail is like a fingerprint. Some tails, especially from recent outcross lines, will have a much straighter feeling and even appearing tail. And then other tails where you get like a pom-pom, or you just get some crazy, hook. So, I mean, this is the best way to, I guess, let the judges know, to break it down that there's a lot of variables. It's not, you can't hone in on one specific tail shape because every cat is going to be unique when it comes to that.
Annette,
Yes, I can live with the tail change, or I can live with the way it was before, and we should have separated those two things out. But I actually thought we'd take that thing like the feet, would end up not being in there. So it's awkwardly worded under the legs and feet. But I do understand when you have a small, lightweight cat on a slippery table, they aren't always real steady on their feet. And I've noticed that in judging these cats. If it's a mature cat and it's fairly chunky, then it'll stand there. But if it's a lighter, younger cat, they're not cowpox, they just don't get their feet. Persians sometimes slip and slide on the table, but they got sturdier legs and they're lower to the ground. But I think the way, as I think we communicated when we were working on this, the way to handle this is to have the judging program send out some notices to the judges. When you're judging toy box, make sure that they're on the floor, they're not slipping around on the table before you're jumping to conclusions. I think that's really the way to handle it.
Pam Delabar,
What?
you had your hand up.
No, I didn't.
Well, a long time ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
Okay. I didn't want you to miss any opportunity.
I wouldn't, don't worry, I wouldn't.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm gonna call the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any abstentions? Motion fails. I don't have to call for it. No, I got the other two, they're 0-0. Okay. Annette?
So standard change number 5 is to update the code descriptions and format them to make the short hair and the long hair descriptions easier to differentiate in the standard. They were run together before, so that's just a little bit of moving things around. So under coat texture and length, the short hair toy bob coat, changing from slightly plush to moderately plush, adding slightly crisp to the touch. Overall texture can vary with coat color, and allowance should be made for minimal seasonal changes in coat density, texture, and length. And the type toy bob, long hair type toy bob coat is then described separately. Semi-long, too long in length. Texture can vary with color. And then it describes that a ruff is desirable, the tail is full and plumed, the ear furnishing, the toe tufts are visible. No ear tufts. And allowance should be made for moderate seasonal changes in coat density, texture, and length. And I think if you're going to put allowances in coat, I think this is where it probably is. So,
Melanie?
Okay, well, I agree, that's where this should be. When you say overall texture can vary with coat color, but you don't say which coat colors or whatever, then it's just a statement out there that's thrown out there with no specifics for me, so. I'm a little, I don't have a problem with this per se, but I think it's about halfway to where you really want to go.
Any additional questions?
co-color varies?
I mean, with our conversations with, judges, they've told us, black cats tend to have a silkier coat, which is true. There are, certain colors do seem to affect, the texture of the coat. So I feel that, especially since someone like Ms. Delabar, who's more familiar with the pointed cat, maybe I feel it would be helpful if she knows that, there are going to be coat texture changes with different colors and patterns.
Mark?
I would think the judges would understand that, because certainly in other breeds, I worked for decades with Persians and exotics. A black is generally silky, a cream is generally cottony. Yeah, the judges are all familiar with this. So I don't have a problem with their saying, coming out. I don't know if they need to, but I don't have a problem with it.
Well, again, this is all, a lot of this is actually based on the feedback we were getting. So I mean, you guys have a certain opinion, but then the judges that we were conversing with at the shows were telling us, well, you should put this in, you should do that. So, for us, it could get a little confusing. But, I just do want to mention something that a lot of the changes aren't like coming out of nowhere. A lot of the changes are actually trying to make the Russian standards more cohesive to this one, including the WCF standard, because our goal has always been to have a more or less a universal standard where, our Russian associates could work with our cast without having to work, the ears are not right, or, this is not right. If everyone's working on a very similar standard, then it's just helpful overall for the breed. So like I said, to reiterate, it's not like, we're just trying to make changes out of the wind also. So it's based on the feedback we're getting from the judges, and also, trying to make the other standards, and this one more cohesive.
Okay, did you want to comment?
Yeah, so just regarding the color, so we had the conversation with many judges actually regarding adding the specific color description, and we would have to come up with 12 different pages with the standard to describe basically every single color, which I don't know if at this time where the breed stands, it's really necessary to do that. Mr. Hanlon actually mentioned, like most of the judges will know the genetics, will know the background, that specific color will have some slight differences that you should be able to notice when you're judging the cat.
Pam?
There is a definite difference in texture, coat texture with the colors, and most of us have been judging for years. You can feel it be there, even with the short-haired cats. It's very evident. And I know that some associations actually train their judges blindfolded, saying, feel the color. And it's that statement doesn't bother me in the
We
slightest.
understand that, but on the other hand, we just don't want to add 12 different pages of describing
No,
every single color.
need to.
So that was just, I think the feedback I just wanted to provide to
Annette?
comment from.
And when they say that they're actually changing this to say overall texture can vary with coat color, they're taking out allowance for slightly silkier texture for colors, solid black, solid white,
Mhm.
bicolor. So they're taking out that list because it's not one comprehensive, and two, it's not always the case. I think Mark is absolutely correct. We know that there's different textures for different colors, and I really don't think we're going to. They already do a really good job of describing their coat texture. And I think that we don't have to list allowances. I think saying that the texture can vary with the coat color is sufficient.
Any other questions? Mike?
I have one question, and again, speaking as not a judge, this is more a question for the judges on the board about something that's in here. When it specifically says ear furnishings are visible, but then says no ear tufts.
Tufts
As-
on the tips of the ear.
I call those lynx tips. Ear tufts are what's on the inside of the ear. And I've heard it both ways, and that's why I'm asking, is there a general agreement on that? Because if there is, then this is fine,
Yes.
but I don't know.
I like furnished, and that means the
Right.
hair and the ears.
Versus on the inside. Okay, because I've heard all those terms used, but I don't know how judges are trained. So that's why I was asking.
Annette, you wanna, I'm calling for the vote. If you're in favor, raise your hand. Rachel Anger, Ann Belabar, Mike Shelton, Kenny Curley, Carol Krasnowski, Kathy Dunham, Paula Noble, Mark Hannon, Pam Mosier, Annette Wilson, George Eigenhauser, Sharon Roy, John Kalula, Melanie Morgan, Kathy Calhoun, Russell Webb, Yukiko Hayata. I think that's everybody.
Going on to number 6, standard change.
That motion passed unanimously.
Sorry.
With 17 yes, 0 no, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, now, go ahead.
Okay, the number 6 standard change is to clarify lockets and small white spots and allow blue eyes and odd eyes in calico by color patterns. So basically buttons, lockets, small white spots are not penalized and they're not considered bicolors. They're judged as the color, the main color of the cat. And they are adding odd eye color, blue eye color in eye colors and calico patterns. And saying that everything being equal, preference should be given to cats showing more vivid eye color. So
Questions? Any objections to this motion?
No.
Motion passes unanimously.
okay, standard change number 7. Change the penalized section to include important. Clarify the body type penalization. So they're removing the words to foreign body type, which was, awkward. Leaving an oversized cat. They're removing flared ears. Adding penalized for a narrow head, small eyes, eyes set too close, narrow muzzle, weak chin, ears too large, longer neck in adults, delicate boning, elongated body, short, tight, close line coat. And what remains are tufts on the ears of long-haired toy dogs.
Okay, any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Standard change number 8 updates the disqualified section. It leaves in crossed eyes, back tail, complete absence of tail, or tail past the hock. Adds rapid oscillation of eyes, dominant blue-eyed white gene, blue eye color in cats other than pointed, solid white, calico, bicolor, or band coat patterns, disproportionately short legs to the cat's overall body balance, extra toes, evidence of wild ancestry.
Okay, Melanie?
What's evidence of wild ancestry?
Well, I mean, if you see a toy ball with rosettes, that's evidence of wild ancestry. I mean, it's all colors and patterns are allowed, except if you have
Okay,
something that looks like it came from a Bengal or Savannah or something.
George?
I have a problem with dominant blue-eyed gene. If you don't want blue eyes in cats other than pointed, you've already said that. Dominant blue-eyed gene, you're asking the judge to do a cheek swab and run a DNA test on the judgment.
You want to comment?
Yeah, I mean, this is a gene that's running rampant in pretty much most of the breeds now. We don't want it in our breed.
How will the judge
But that's a
identify?
registration
So
issue.
if you have, I'm sorry to interrupt you, you have a brown tabby with blue eyes, it's a disqualification.
George?
But that's already covered by blue eye color in cats other than pointed.
Well, this was actually in the previous standard, it's always been in the standard, and it was removed last time, so we just adding it back just to be really, really clear about it.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, that The breed standard should be what the cat looks like on the table. You shouldn't be asking the judges to be testing its genetics.
I mean, it's visual, you don't have to test for it.
Kathy Calhoun.
I have to agree with George on this. I don't think that this is necessary or anything that you can address as a judge. I think you've stated where you want, where they're allowed and where it's not allowed, and leave it at that. But this whole genetic thing is, you can't do that. A judge can't do that.
Rachel.
Yeah, I don't think it's a deal killer for me. It's repeating what it talks about in other areas of these revisions. I'd like to see it removed at some future time, but the rest of the proposals here I can definitely support.
Annette, do you have,
I agree, but I'm supportive of the other disqualifications.
so who do you agree with, Kathy or Rachel?
Choose.
I'm in agreement with passing this.
Okay.
And asking them to remove something that a judge can't determine when they're judging the cat on the table the next time around.
I would just like to add the comments. So the dominant blue eye gene it's sort of stating the words by referral to the gene, but it's really the description that goes after that describe what the gene means.
That's true, they have a colon there. Right.
Okay. So maybe
Does that make sense?
George?
The problem is putting it in the standard. Assumes they're gonna get a 60% vote to take it back out, and there's no obligation they will.
Can I be honest? I don't want to, I would not want to remove it. It's in our other standards. It was actually in the standard that was approved when we first were registered with CFA. So I'm just adding it.
I mean, the dominant blue eye gene, it's really causing a lot of health issues. So I think it should be taken seriously, whether we describe that as a dominant blue eye, just referring to the genetics. But I think it should be mentioned somehow there, as the description, and it wasn't the purpose of really insinuating that the judges should be running genetic, it's just a referral for purposes.
Pam Delbar.
This could possibly be clarified. I'm going to vote in favor of this. For a disqualify evidence of the dominant blue eye gene. And then give your description just by putting the word evidence, words evidence of would be it, and take away the idea of any type of genetic testing going on the judging table. But you're correct, it is very much a health problem that's
Right.
up for discussion in a lot of different
Yes,
forums.
because I think a lot of point of breed could be, very effective for this, because you can't tell on a point of time whether they carry the gene or not, obviously, but you just want to be explicit in the standards that you don't want to specifically the gene came from Russia.
Annette, what is your recommendation to the board?
My recommendation is to pass it because it says dominant blue eye gene colon, which is explaining that it's blue eye color in cats other than pointed, solid white, calico, bicolor, or Van coat pattern. And adding and revising it next year to say evidence I would be something that they would. So I actually misread this too. That it explains, it's okay in these cats. That would not be necessarily the dominant blue eye gene, although it could be. So it's not asking the judges to make a genotypic decision. So
Okay, so your recommendation is supporting it, and then they come back and fix it next year. Okay,
I don't think there's a problem.
okay, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Rachel Anger, Pam Delabar, Mike Shelton, Kenny Curley, Carol Kuznowski, Paula Noble, Kathy Dunham, Mark Hannon, Pam Mosier, Annette Wilson, Sharon Roy, Russell Webb, and Yukiko Hayata. All those opposed, raise your hand. George Eigenhauser, Melanie Morgan, Kathy Calhoun. Any abstentions? I see no abstentions.
John, did I get a vote from you?
No, I was a no.
Oh, you're a no? Did I skip you or?
I raised my hand kind of late,
Oh, okay, kind of late.
kind of late.
All right. You all set?
That's 13 yes, 4 no, 0 abstentions.
Motion passes. Okay, Annette?
Yes, the next one is a registration rule, to change the permissible outcrossings in the registration rule, which will now read Russian domestic short hair and long hair with similar phenotype and no structural mutations. Previously, it said it was cats currently imported from the Euro regions of Russia. And so they're removing that, and I would support this.
Okay, any questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Perfect time. So, sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so Iris Zink is on there to do the presentation of the bimetallic color. So you'll have to scroll to and the Siberian proposal, and then when we're finished with that, they have the toy box set up down in there, and then she's gonna go over this little presentation and we'll address the other two toy box.
Okay, what room are they in? Erie room?
Erie room, which is down by the.
It's down by the elevator, she just the
Okay.
opposite hallway, just down, right, to the left.
Okay,
It's that way.
It's that way.
all right, thank you for
Thank you.
your presentation, answering questions. We're gonna go to Iris. Iris, can you hear me?
She's on mute.
We cannot hear you, Iris.
There. How about now?
Hear you now.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Good morning from Malaysia. I realize that you've all been through a very long day with a lot of things to consider. I'm not going to go over every detail of this presentation, but we are going to run through it so you get a look at these cats before we discuss the wording of the proposed standard color description for the standard. So we had to discuss both Goldens and bimetallics, even though it's the bimetallics that are new, because it's necessary to understand that we're dealing with a different gene on the Goldens than what had previously been thought. So do you want to advance it, Aileen? What you see there are two slightly different variants of this golden gene, which was only isolated in 2021 and is distinctly different from the golden gene that we see in the Persian. And it's important to understand that the original golden tabby description that went into the Siberian standard was adapted from the Persian, as so many color descriptions are. And we discovered, to our surprise, when at a show where there were 4 different golden tabbies from different lines being shown, that not a single one of them had black markings. They were all a rich brown. And so that's the genesis of this proposed change. The Corin gene or sunshine gene also produces a cat that does not have nose liner. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that. These cats have distinct pink noses without the black outlining. And their markings tend to become less distinct as the cat matures. It's a characteristic of the gene. It's not a fault. And so what we've done, because of the fact that we only have a 3-generation requirement, and we do have a that does give us room for a lot of foundation cats in the further generations back. It is very possible that we could see a golden tabby Siberian that does have black markings, that does have no liners. I personally have not seen any, but I don't want to exclude them. We wanted to simply adapt the wording that we had so that it correctly described the majority of the cats that are being shown. We are getting quite a lot of golden tabbies being shown now. And that's basically all there is to this part of the presentation. So we can move on. You all have copies of this presentation so you can read it in depth if there are any concerns. But once you understand that there is this different gene involved, it then becomes apparent that it's not a variant of the silver gene at all. And so it can coexist in the same cat with the silver gene. And that's where we get a bimetallic. So if we could move on to the next slide. This gives you the genetic background of how a bimetallic happens. They are not new to the breed. I actually got one myself in the middle of COVID, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a very bad, very tarnished shaded silver, despite the fact that it had distinct golden tabby markings, but we didn't have the information. The gene hadn't been isolated yet. I just registered it as a shaded silver and padded it out. And we do have in our current standard a note that there is no penalty for tarnishing, which I attribute to the fact that these cats have actually been around for quite a long time without anyone understanding exactly what they were. It does mean there's a lot of pedigrees out there that have incorrect color descriptions because people wanted to get their cats registered and they didn't quite know what to call them. But if you understand that we have this new and different golden gene that can coexist with silver and produce golden and silver together in the same cat, then hopefully it all makes sense. So in the next slide, you see a mother and son. Could you go back one, Aileen? Yeah. So we have a mother and son of bimetallics, and the tabby markings in the mother, who's obviously older, are less distinct. The son has much more pronounced tabby markings, but in that picture, he's only 4 months old, and his markings are already becoming less distinct. So we can move on. And I do want to make the point that most of the cats that you're seeing in this part of the presentation are chosen to show you the variety of colors that fall under the bimetallic description rather than examples of good show type, because most of them are not bred to the CFA standard. Most of them are from overseas. But the important part of this standard wording is that we have 2 different pieces of tabby markings, one with the black tabby markings that you get in a silver, and one with the rich brown markings that you get in the previously mentioned golden. So I just wanted to show you some pictures. And we also have bimetallics with white, with dilute, with the pointed gene. And Annette and Paul Patton and Aileen and I worked through all the colors that we felt were currently acceptable There are some other color possibilities that we think could happen, but nobody has seen them. Nobody's seen examples of them yet. So this list may be expanded. And our rationale for this change is simply, it's a unique color. It's unique to the breed. I have looked everywhere that I could, and I could not find another association that had a written description for bimetallic. The cats are out there, they're being shown, and we needed to provide something to help judges figure out what they were supposed to be seeing. The proposed standard has been tested. I have been showing it to judges as I've been showing one particular bimetallic cat, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. And here we have the cat. So that is basically all we have to the presentation. I want to thank everybody that helped me out with pictures, and thank you all for your attention and consideration.
Thank you, Iris. I'm going to turn this over to Annette. Annette?
Thank you, Iris, not just for the presentation, but before being up in the middle of the night to present this. The first standard change then, which passed the breed council, is to change the wording of golden tabby to reflect the effect that the sunshine or corn gene has on the golden tabbies. So moved.
Any questions?
Just a comment.
Go ahead.
I've had the opportunity to see the bimetallic Siberian that's been out, I think primarily in region 1. And I loved reading this presentation. I thought it was really nicely put together. I find the whole thing fascinating. I finally feel better about the fact that the Siberian standard says allow, that tarnish is allowed, because it always bugged me as a silver breeder, but now I'm like, this is cool. It's really beautiful. Again, I like the fact that this gives us an opportunity to provide a description and lets us know what we are seeing is allowed, and gives us a feel of what we should be looking for. I think they've done a really great job here.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Annette?
But first, we're talking about the golden tabby.
Yeah, but it brings in the corn effect as well, or the effects. So I'm just talking about the whole.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Melanie. It's amazing if you have a chance to see that bimetallic. We had it in the Vermont show, in the breed showcase. It's like nothing you've ever seen. And it's gorgeous.
Pam Delabar?
I have judged the bimetallics in the Czech Republic, and they actually have breeders who are trying for homozygous bimetallics in the Siberians, and it's very, very attractive.
Annette?
So could I move that we pass the standard change for the golden tabby?
Second.
Yeah, that's what we're working on, right?
Yeah, right, that's what we're talking about. We're not working on it.
Yeah, that's what your motion was. Oh, that's what your motion is. All right, any other questions? Any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and now. Now, standard change number 2, which also passed the breed council by 60%, is the color description for the bimetallics, which I agree are unique, interesting, and very cool.
Very cool.
Okay.
So moved. Second.
No, it's our, we have standings.
We have a
already.
standing second. That's
Right, we already have it. Any more comments?
No.
Okay, any objections? Seeing no objection, motion passes unanimously. Iris, congratulations and thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Annette?
And thanks to Annette for all of her hard work on all of these breeds.
Okay, thank you, Iris.
So now we could maybe go down to the Erie room and see the presentation on the toy box and maybe spend 10 or 15 minutes there, then we could come back. Okay, so the toy box, breed committee chairs requested advancement from miscellaneous provisional and to championship status, which we will have to vote on separately. Here's the registration and entry statistics. The breed was accepted May 1st, 2019. There are 25 breeders. There are 215 cats registered. 91 were registered by pedigree, 124 by CFA litter registration. And this is in the last year, 58 more than the previous year. We had 149 cats entered, of which 44 were unique individual cats in regions, shown in regions 1 through 9. Gigi is the chair of the breed committee. There are 2 other members, but I know she's working on trying to get some of these newer breeders in the breed committee also. The International Toy Bob Cat Club is in good standing with CFA. The standard continues to change. We just discussed the most recent iteration. The Japanese Bobtail Breed Council objects to them as a lookalike breed and has some concerns about miniaturization and interbreeding. I read you their objection. There are some concerns from some judges about miniaturization. Judges' reports run about 60-40 in favor of advancing them to provisional. Many less are in favor of advancing them to championship. They are about 60-40 also about whether they're real distinctive, but I think in reading those comments, it was at shows where they only saw one cat. And it's real hard to, and that was their biggest complaint from the judges' reports. And these are just reports from this last count, the last count. Their biggest complaint is not seeing more of a variety of cats at the shows. Often there's only one, and often it's the same cat. Their entry summary is shown here, so showing the 149 and how many were shown in each of the regions. These are total cats, not unique cats. And then a list of the breeders' names, the individual categories, and then Gigi sent me a list of additional categories that have been added. So we have a list of additional, and so they meet the 25 breeder requirement. And then is their presentation, which we just saw. So that's what I have. So are they?
I'm ready to go into closed session when you say so.
I'm ready, unless anybody has any more questions for Gigi and Mark.
Okay, we're gonna go into closed session, so
You should be on there.
welcome back. Annette?
So thank you again for coming and bringing the cats. And the board voted separately on this issue. We have an advance to provisional status, but not to change. So we need to work on the standard more. And any of the comments that about the standard changes today that either didn't pass or you were asked to consider, we should really talk about those. Because normally if the standard continues to be revised, it's not a good move, you know, to move to request it again next year. But if there were things that came up today and you're willing to address those, I think we could, you know, file for nothing. We really appreciate having more than one cat in a show. It actually would be better to pick 1 or 2 shows in a region, enter a bunch of them, and then gather the input from judges that are actually able. Now they'll be hanging ribbons at least. That's you won't get titles, you won't get rosettes, but the judges will mark best, second, and third. So you'll have that kind of feedback. What you lose by going from miscellaneous to provisional is you don't get to go up there and talk to the judges. But you get the feedback. Are there questions about that, or would you like to say?
Yeah, I just have one comment because the question always will come up, and I feel like it will be coming up anyway. So the topic of minority breed, number one, and also in the requirements of the CFA requirements, it doesn't really specifically say how many cats you should be showing in terms of the requirements. So when we get the feedback saying, well, we don't see enough cats, would there be a specific number that we can refer in order to justify that requirement in terms of the feedback, although the specific requirement is not really listed?
Right, the reason not to put numbers in the advancement matrix is because some breeds have people that live a lot. It's better to focus on getting multiple examples in some shows with different judges seeing them, so you can get because we get the written reports from the judges there. Then just taking the same cat and taking it to, you know, 2 shows in this region, 2 shows in this region, 2 shows in this region, then we're not actually, then we have 1 cat. Not a bad cat, but we're not seeing the variety of ages, the variety of genders, the variety of coat lengths and so on. So, you know, it's more, you need to kind of think about what are we looking to do here? We're trying to expose this breed to as many genders as we can, and examples that meet the standard as closely as possible. And when you're taking feedback from the judges, don't just take the feedback from 1 or 2 judges or the same judge all the time, or just what you want to hear. Okay, not that you do that, but you have to kind of put it all as a group, which is kind of what we tried to do when we did the judges' reports. There weren't a lot of judges' reports, and so taking those forms or reminding the judges they can fill it out online is something you should be doing too when the cats are going to the shows. Hand out the paper reports and ask that they fill in detail. When the judges actually write comments about what they think, it's about those cats that they saw at the show as how they meet the standard.
George, you had a comment?
And just an unsolicited piece of advice. If you have multiple cats at a show and the judges are consistently picking a cat that you would not have picked, that means whatever you have in your head as your standard and what's being communicated on paper to the judges is not matching up. So that kind of gives you some guidance as to where you need to work on your standard.
Which really, you know, we are sort of standards.
And I want to reiterate what some folks said when we were actually discussing the standard changes, is that it should describe the perfect adult bovine. And that's what you should show. And then the judge should be able to read that standard and realize how close that cat is to them. Okay, so its ears are a little bit low, but there's always going to be, or its tail's a little bit long, but it's got multiple kinks, and that's good. So, you know, and so on. That's what you do. I'm sure it's what you do when you're evaluating.
I mean, the changes that we requested. The changes that we requested was for the perfect cat, and it was actually, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the changes was reflected other standards here. And my biggest issue, you know, as the breed chair of CFA is trying to convince, you know, exhibitors to, you know, participate in this region when they're showing in CFA or CFF or now LCWW, they're already getting their title, you know? So it's, you know, it's gonna be difficult to try to,
It's something we can work out for this.
well, like Margot said, I mean, it's always gonna be a minority breed. I mean, I've been to CFA shows where it'll be like, you know, one chartreuse.
Right.
So I don't see how, you know, moving forward with the soy bob is gonna be any different unless, you know, I get my way and I continue to, you know, market and promote the breed, you know, and try to get it more popular.
I'm not sure why you're comparing them to the
I was just mentioning that it's a minority breed also.
Oh, sure.
The judges say,
You don't see a lot of, but the standard describes a good standard with the judges.
yeah, but the standard
Elevated.
So the standard that I supposed to be obeyed is already more or less. That's very similar to other standards here in Columbia.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna take a look at them. And just so maybe we can come to some consensus on some of the wording.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that I did, you know, I'm leaving here with some good suggestions. Like, you know, I'm adamant about not making any changes. I don't know what I'm trying to Okay, right. What I just want to clarify is that, what we presented was for cats, not what we have. Even though we do have cats that stand very well, but.
Thank you again. I don't, we have. Not sure.
No, I mean, it was a pleasure.
Okay.
And we're happy that we, thank you. We're happy that we.
I look forward to continuing to work.
Yes, so.
Thank you for attending
We'll be
and,
back next year.
If God permits.
right, thank you.
Have a nice day.
Okay, we're 6:01. We're gonna adjourn the meeting. I want to thank Yokiko and Matthew for being on the meeting from the other side of the world. Thank you, and thank you all here. See you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.